Pokemon, Pokemon, Pokemon. What can you say about it? It's one of the largest media franchises in history. From the main series games to the spin-offs, the anime, all the manga, trading cards, not to mention merchandise, Nintendo and Game Freak sure did hit a gold mine, and it's pretty impressive when you think about it. This massive franchise all began with a simple game, Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, later released as Red and Blue in the US. This game seemingly defied every rule of what made a game successful or not. In a time where gamers were just obsessed with 3D graphics and cutting-edge gameplay, Pokemon offered a 2D, 8-bit, black and white experience on a 7-year-old console, 9 in North America. Despite that though, Gen 1 of Pokemon was a smash hit, selling nearly 50 million copies worldwide, and as of me recording this video, it's the 12th best-selling game ever made. The cultural influence of Pokemon in the late 90s and early 2000s just cannot be overstated. In fact, there's even a word for it, Pokemania. I, unfortunately, was born a few years after it ended, so I don't know what firsthand it was like, but even with Gen 1 being well before my time, it was actually the first Pokemon title I got to play, and I still have deep nostalgia for it. Plus, I've already covered every generation so far, from Gen 2 to Gen 6, so now's as good of a time as ever to take a step back and replay one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm playing Yellow, for the extra content and slight improvements it adds. Without further ado though, I give you Pokemon Red and Blue and Green and Yellow and Pokemon Gen 1. And right off the bat, we get one of the greatest title screens in gaming. Seriously, this music playing right here is my favorite title theme of the series. It may not be cinematic or beautiful, but it's catchy and nostalgic, and it comes back in basically every Pokemon game since. Now for another iconic sequence, meeting Professor Oak, who gives us the whole explanation of what Pokemon are and the world of Pokemon. Professor Oak is definitely a lot of people's favorite professor of the series, seeming like a real professor. Then the player wakes up in Pallet Town, a humble village, simple to its core. The plotline that basically every Pokemon game follows is established here too. Professor Oak gives the player and their rival starter Pokemon, then requests that they complete the Pokédex and take on the Pokemon League. Our main characters are perhaps the most iconic ones of the whole series. Who am I kidding? Definitely the most iconic. Red and Blue. Or as kids may have named them back then, Ash and Gary. Red is your typical Pokemon protagonist. He's silent, fatherless, and wears a cap pretty much everywhere. He's probably my favorite main character in the series after maybe Gold. Yeah, he may not be the one to stop a world-ending event right before the Elite Four like the others, yet there's something about him. Maybe it's just because he's the first, maybe it's because of his manga adaptations, maybe it's because people compare him to Ash, or maybe it's because he comes back in later games as a badass trainer with ridiculously strong mons. In any case, I love him. Then there's Blue, your rival, and one that later rivals pale in comparison to. Other than Silver, Blue is the only one that feels like a true rival. Not someone you're a friend with, not someone you're in friendly competition with, but someone you borderline hate, someone who insults you, someone who's always one step ahead of you, someone who always trumps you in life, someone you envy. He's the grandson of Professor Oak, which has to sting, considering Oak is most likely one of Red's only father figures. I mean, not to mention that he's probably banging his mom, but anyway. And on top of that, he has a loving sister too, while Red is a single child with a single mother. Every encounter with Blue across the game is always a big deal. He's a huge dick, and his team is usually pretty strong and well balanced. We will almost definitely never get a rival like him ever again. Don't get me wrong, I love the close-knit friend groups of the later games, yet you never get the same feeling of whenever you see them. In Red and Blue, the starters are Charmander, the fire type, Squirtle, the water type, and Bulbasaur, the grass type. Blue always chooses the starter super effective against yours, which is a staple pretty much every other rival follow. However, in Yellow, events follow the anime a little more closely, and you get only one choice, a Pikachu, while Blue gets an Eevee, but evolves differently depending on which battles with him you lose or win. This Pikachu isn't an ordinary Pikachu though, it's a special one that has very compressed audio clips of its voice, like the one that appears in the anime. In all honesty though, it still sounds pretty decent for the OG Game Boy, and you don't hear many actual voice clips on an 8-bit console. Other than its newfangled voice, this Pikachu will walk behind a player, and you can interact with it to see what it's feeling. This mechanic would later be implemented on a larger scale in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, including every Pokemon in that game. But do you want to know what sucks about this Pikachu? It can't evolve, making your starter almost useless by the endgame. Look, I know the anime made a big point about Pikachu not really wanting to evolve, but seriously, did they really need to replicate that in this game? On the plus side, the original starters can be obtained too, all 3 of them, and in the order Ash gets them in an anime. Well, I mean, if you choose to get them in that order. Anyway, Bulbasaur can be obtained from this woman in Cerulean if your Pikachu has max happiness. Charmander is given by this guy at Cerulean Cove, and unlike Damien, he acknowledges that he's not a great trainer. Lastly, Squirtle is handed over by Officer Jenny in Vermilion City, telling you about how naughty he's been. It's awesome to be able to have all 3 starters on the same cart, without having to trade them over from other games or people. And it's a bonus I wish the other third versions of later installments would have followed up on. And since we're on a topic of starters, let's talk about these guys in full. Charmander starts off very weak, and the game is much tougher at the start if you choose him, being weak to the first 2 gyms. But as he grows, he steadily gains strength, evolving into Charmeleon, then Charizard, the second most popular Pokemon of all time after Pikachu, dual firefighting, and the strongest of the 3 when fully evolved. Squirtle is in the middle in terms of trade-offs. The early game isn't as hard as it is with Charmander, yet it's not as strong at its full potential either, evolving into Wartortle, then into Blastoise, who honestly is the coolest looking of the starters fully evolved, at least in my opinion. Bulbasaur, meanwhile, makes the early game really easy, being super effective against the first 2 gyms, but by the end game is pretty weak compared to the other 2, even more so because the early generations suck in terms of good grass type moves. The strongest grass type move is Solar Beam, which takes a turn to charge, or Razor Leaf, which pales in comparison to Fire Blast or Surf. Bulbasaur evolved into Ivysaur, then into Venusaur. In later generations, I quite like using Venusaur. In Gen 1 though, I wish they had a better potential moveset. Still a great mon though. Then I had my Snorlax, a Pokemon that I've wanted to try on my team for a while, but never could quite find a room for. Snorlax is a tank with a lot of HP, plus it can learn a lot of great moves like Blizzard 2. And my last team member was Mew, the mythical 151st Pokemon that can learn any moves with an HM or TM. Because of that, it's a fantastic Mon that can be molded whatever way you wish. However, Mew isn't supposed to be obtainable, as the only way there was to legit get it was through special events in the 90s. Thankfully though, there is a glitch that you can use to capture Mew. First, get to Cerulean City, then defeat almost all the trainers on Route 5, except for this guy and this guy, then catch an Abra. Step in front of the first guy, use Teleport, and warp back to the Pokemon Center. After that, fight the youngster with the Slowpoke. Teleport again, walk to Nugget Bridge, the menu will pause automatically, unpause it, and there you go. I've used Mew on pretty much every Gen 1 team I've ever built, and they're almost always the best member, with Ice Beam, Psychic, and every great move that other team members don't need or can't learn. And I realize right now that I broke the long tradition in my Pokemon retrospectives of naming my Psychic types after PSI users in the Mother franchise. I mean, to be fair, I ran out of PSI users, but still, rest in peace to the fun tradition I had going. Gen 1's region of Kanto isn't just loosely based on a real-life place. It is a real-life place. Kanto exists in our world, and is the heart of Japan. It contains Tokyo, a large portion of the Japanese population, and a lot of other cool stuff. Kanto is very urban, containing a lot of large cities. Well, at least in canon, like Saffron, which is based on Tokyo itself, or Celadon. It's also a much more futuristic place, in concept art, the paved roads, and the technology. Sure, it all exists in every Pokemon game, yet Kanto has a much more high-tech feel and design, at least in my opinion. The Pokemon of Kanto honestly are hit and miss. Whenever I think of Kanto's Mons, I usually think of the best and most iconic. Plenty of them exist for sure, however, I think there's a bit of survivorship bias. While you do have some great timeless designs such as Pikachu, Charizard, Dragonite, or Gengar, you have a lot of slop too, that everyone just kinda forgets about. First are the uninspired. Muck is just a living pile of sludge. Execute is just a bunch of eggs with eyes. Voltorb is a living Pokeball. And Seal is a literal seal. Then you have the uncanny, human-looking Mons, like Jinx and Mr. Mime, while Hypno is just nightmare fuel, and the internet has ruined him forever. Not to mention the Mons that, while having cool designs, aren't good gameplay-wise. Onix is freaking awesome design-wise, and it should be a beast. However, it was designed more to be the first boss, and teach kids how typing works, and that you can't just brute force your way through every fight, and less focused on actually being good. Just look at these stats. The only good thing it has is physical defense. Ditto sounds cool, being a Pokemon that can transform into its opponent, yet it can't learn any other move other than transform, so it just becomes a pain to use. Oh yeah, and the internet has ruined it too. Survivorship bias aside, I do think all in all, the devs knocked it out of the park their first try. Maybe it's the nostalgia talking, maybe it's because Kanto Mons come back in nearly every game onward, but if I had to pick one generation's Pokemon as my favorite, it would be Gen 1. I'm familiar with them, and while I definitely do like trying new things, sometimes you need something you know like the back of your hand, as comfort food. Being the first Pokemon game and all, Red and Blue are very bare bone. black and white graphics, primitive sprites, little animation, few fancy mechanics, and a lot of imbalanced gameplay. Running with B, not here yet. Key item selection, also not here yet. And neither are abilities, berries, special types of Pokeballs, fancy side modes, or even some simple stuff that you may take for granted, such as being able to cut trees or surf by just pressing A, instead of having to bring up the whole menu, seeing what moves a TM teaches, without having to boot it up, or having different item categories in your bag. And that's not all. The gameplay is super imbalanced too. Steel types and dark types don't exist yet, and neither do fairy types, but I feel that should be obvious. Some types like dragon and ghost might as well not exist yet either. For dragons, there's only one evolution line, the Dratini line, and only one move, Dragon Rage, which always does 40 damage, meaning 0 damage calculated dragon type moves exist yet. Ghost types aren't much better. The only ghost line is the Ghastly line, and the only ghost type move is Lick, which isn't a great move. But it gets even worse, as there's an error with the game's code, which makes psychic types immune to ghost type moves, you know, a thing that ghost types are most needed for, especially since there's no dark types. In fact, since the Ghastly line are dual poison type, they're weak to psychic attacks too. And again, with the dark type not existing yet either, psychic types are OP as hell here. I mean, sure, it's fun when you have an overpowered psychic type, but it's not as much fun when your opponent does and you really don't have a counter for it. As a whole, the game's code is held together with scotch tape. For minor visual glitches, some moves don't work, the critical rate is way higher than it's supposed to be, and there's a part where you can actually get soft locked out of clearing the game. The Safari Zone contains some crucial items, like the HMs for Strength and Surf, which you need to beat the game. However, it costs around 500 Pokédollars to enter each time, which doesn't sound like a big deal, yet there's no way to rematch trainers, a finite number of them, and as such a finite amount of money. So if you spend it all before getting those HMs, you're fucked. Despite the flaws and limitations of Gen 1, there's also some silver lining to be found in the simpleness of it. Later games have a lot of other factors that make battling a lot more complicated. Abilities, natures, hold items, etc. Here though, I often found myself relaxed at how simple battles were, without having to worry about such a variety of different factors in play. Not having a whole lot of dialogue, cutscene, or lore is also relaxing. Don't get me wrong, I love having all that stuff. I just need a break from it at times. Or HMs. They are a plague in the series until Sun and Moon, especially in Gens 2, 3, and 4. Gen 1, meanwhile, did it right mostly, containing only 5 HMs. Sure, it's still annoying, yet a fifth of your moveset being HMs is still way better than a third. Unless you use HM slaves, but that's also kind of annoying. Speaking of that though, you really don't need HM slaves here either. Flash is only needed once or twice, making the true number needed 4. And since this generation lacks a lot of great moves for certain Pokemon, oftentimes you'll have a lot more free space open for moves like Strength or Cut. On the flip side though, there's no move deleter, meaning there's no way to remove HMs from team members. And I really wish I would have known that before I taught Flash to Pikachu, so be careful. Gen 1 of Pokemon has a vibe unlike any other game in the series. This was before various lore and rules were established, and you can see a lot of early installment weirdness, both in the games and the anime. Various real-life locations and animals are referenced in Pokédex entries. Early on, I don't quite think the devs were completely set on the idea of Pokemon being the only animals in this world, or of a Pokemon world being so deviant from our own. The world has a much more real, dark undertone, and maybe it's because of the primitive graphics with next to no animation, maybe it's because of its age. Either way, this game freaks me out sometimes, in a similar way to Mother 1, and the sheer amount of freaky areas sure don't help matters. And I just don't mean Lavender Town. Even simple caves like Mount Moon or Cerulean Cave are freaky, mostly because the devs went all out on the music, hard, and in my opinion, I think chiptune helps a lot in making already creepy songs even creepier. There's not quite the feeling of dread being lost in caves in Gen 1 compared with later installments. And while admittedly I was pretty annoyed in Mount Moon, I also felt alive, and not just like I was going through emotions, with disinterest, like a lot of other Pokemon playthroughs lately. Moving a step up, there's the Pokemon Mansion on Cinnabar Island. It's full of robbers, neat items, and lore. Lots of lore regarding the creation of Mewtwo. You know how every horror game has to have a cliché collection of notes that begin with successfully pulling off an experiment, then ending with, and then it escaped, and we all died? Yeah, that's pretty much what happens here. Some researchers capture Mew, and from it, with years of horrible gene splicing, created Mewtwo, or according to his journal, Mew gave birth, which kind of contradicts the other lore, but anyway. The crowning achievement, however, is Lavender Town, perhaps the most discussed spooky level to not be in a horror game, or even in general. The town acts as a burial place for Pokemon, and Team Rocket has invaded the tower, and taken the caretaker of the town's Pokemon, Mr. Fuji, hostage. They've even gone so far to kill Cubone's mother, or at least this particular Cubone, because the logistics of a whole species having half their mother die and wear the skull just isn't feasible, especially since Team Rocket has not existed nearly as long as the species. But upon entering the tower, you get confronted by ghosts. You can't catch them, you can't fight them, and have no choice but to leave, until getting the Self Scope. With it, these ghosts are revealed to actually be Pokemon, yet evil spirits are still ever present. They possess these psychic girls all around the tower, and when you beat them, they return to normal. Freaky. And their lines are even freakier. One straight up says, "Give me blood." When you make it past all of that, you fight a real ghost. The ghost of Marowak, the mother of the Cubone in Lavender Town. After beating it, she moves on to the afterlife. Mr. Fuji is rescued, and you move on to the next city, most likely never coming back to Lavender Town for the rest of the playthrough. That's a lot already. Yet the music of both Lavender Town itself and Pokemon Tower add even more. These tracks are truly haunting and awesome, in a way that doesn't translate too well outside of 8-bit chiptune. When I was younger, I remember being terrified of Lavender Town and its music, as did many growing up, which is why there's a whole urban legend surrounding it. The story goes that back when Red and Green was first released, the original version of Lavender Town was much darker, having certain frequencies that only kids between the age of 7 and 12 could hear, and these sounds in the song caused them to take their own lives. It should go without saying that Lavender Town Syndrome is total bullshit, yet it became a pretty popular creepypasta in the 2000s. Another popular Pokemon creepypasta back in the day was about Blue's dead Eradicate. In the early rival battles of the game, Blue has a Rattata, which evolves into Eradicate. However, after VSSN, it disappears. The next time the player fights him is in Lavender Town. Blue only has 5 Pokemon, making it kinda weird to store it into PC. This has led some to theorize that it died on SSN after your rival battle there. And the reason why Blue is found in Lavender Town is because he's paying respects at its grave. While definitely not true, it's not a terrible creepypasta, especially compared with Buried Alive. Buried Alive involves a supposed beta boss in Lavender Town, a zombie crawling from a grave. His team consists of Muck, Gengar, and Whitehand, a supposed beta Pokemon that was scrapped. Now, there is a sliver of truth to Whitehand. If you may remember, a girl in Lavender Town pranks you by telling you there's a white hand on your shoulder if you say to her that you don't believe in ghosts. This Pokemon is supposed to be that white hand. If you beat Buried Alive, the game freezes. And if you lose, you get this game over screen, where Red gets eaten by him. And if that wasn't enough, for whatever reason, the programmers decided to have this image overwrite your Game Boy's internal memory and brick the console forever. I mean, at this point, if you're a developer who's gone this far to traumatize kids already, you might as well go all out at this point. And you know, also force people to buy more Game Boys too, since your consoles will get bricked. All in all, Lavender Town is awesome. While it did scare me as a kid, even more so with all the creepypastas, as an adult, it feels special. It makes me feel alive. It's also one of the most unique aspects of the Gen 1 games, and it's very nostalgic. From watching Yuri of Wynn's videos, to making my own videos on it as a teenager, although it's too bad how much it gets toned down in later releases. In FireRed, the plot remains mostly the same, yet it lacks the same intense feel. While in the Jodo games, the tower has become a radio tower, while the graves have been moved into this house. I feel like this violates so many rules of horror movies, but hey, Mr. Fuji has gone along with it, so I guess it's all okay. Now let's talk gyms. And oh boy, is there a lot to talk about here. The first gym leader of the franchise is Brock, the rock-hard, rock-type master. And yet, he's barely known for his role in the actual games. Rather, his role in the anime, as the love-struck, master chef, big brother-like figure to the group. In the games though, he's pretty forgettable. As a character at least, because as a boss, he is a pain in the ass if you chose Charmander, and an even bigger one in Yellow, where you're forced to use Pikachu. You basically have to raise another Pokemon to fight him, but there aren't many options to catch at this point of the game either. Butterfree with Confusion is what I always go with. I also have a funny story. So the first time I played this game, I decided I'd wing it with Brock, and not grind at all. I can't fully remember my team, but I chose Charmander, while the rest of my team consisted of like a Pidgey, Pikachu, and some bug fodder. Well, his Onix killed pretty much all my team except for a Metapod. A Metapod that only knew Pardon. So instead of resetting like a normal person, I hardened and hardened, to the point of being invulnerable to Onix's attacks. Then managed to beat it with struggle, after probably a good 20 minutes of agony. Don't ask me why I didn't just reset, because I'm 90% sure I would have won a lot quicker with a second try than spamming Harden and Struggle. Next is Misty, the tomboyish mermaid, who like Brock, is much more well known from the anime than the games. She's a water type user, and I'm sure a lot of us had a crush on as a kid. Unlike in the anime, however, Misty is just kind of there, and not playing any kind of role in the story whatsoever other than just being a boss. Her team also kinda sucks, frankly, only being a Staryu and Starmie, which is kind of weird considering how many other water types they could have just given her, instead of using 2 Pokemon of the same evolution line. Third is Lieutenant Surge, an American, and not an Anovan, like actual American, because the lore of the world of Pokemon at this point hasn't been established. His gym is annoying, with this switch puzzle, where you need to pick 2 of the right trash cans in a row to pass, and it comes down to luck. Surge uses electric types, and Yellow changes his team to only consist of a Raichu, just like the episode of the anime. I was underprepared for this fight, underestimating him because he only had 1 Pokemon. My team got crushed by him, being outsped and outfought, except for Charmeleon and Mew, who got it down to red. I was down to just my Pikachu, who then turned to fight around, and beat his Raichu with a quick attack. It was a pretty cool moment, and one that definitely feels like it came straight from the manga or anime. Then we have Erica. Oh my sweet Erica, my favorite waifu of the series. Step aside all the filthy Gardevoir fans or low punny enjoyers. She's cute, she has a unique design, and she just comes across as sweet and elegant. Sure, I mean, she has no character or personality, to be frank, but honestly, does any gym leader of this game have a personality? Like, seriously. Her gym is a garden and girls only club. So much, in fact, that there's this old pervert outside watching them. Creepy. When you fight Erica, she doesn't even realize you wish to battle her at first, almost dozing off. And some think she has sleep apnea. Don't ask me how I know so many fun facts about her. Let's move on. She uses grass types, however, many of her team are dual grass poison, which, you guess it, means her team is gonna have a rough time. Overall, the best Pokemon waifu ever, and I hate how the anime treated her, making her this petty shopkeep, who doesn't even let Ash in her gym for not liking perfume, like a reverse of how the anime treated Whitney or Claire. Koga is 5th, the ninja poison leader of Fuchsia City. I'm gonna be honest, he's pretty forgivable, and if you have psychic types like Mew, he's a complete pushover despite his high levels. Following him is Sabrina, another hottie. Yeah, she might be creepy, but there's also this mysterious charm around her. Well, that and her skin-tight suit. She uses psychic types. With how OP they are in Gen 1, this usually isn't a very fun time. After that, there's Blaine, a bald scientist guy that everyone forgets about, and he uses fire types. And the final gym leader is someone I'll discuss later. For now, let's talk about versions. When the first Gen 1 games came out in 1996 in Japan, you had Red and Green, not Red and Blue. These two are like the Red and Blue we got in the West, but are a bit rougher, with sprites that overall look pretty off, and even more broken gameplay and glitches. Later that year, an improved version of the game was released, with a new engine, new sprites, and different catchable Pokemon. Pokemon Blue. When Gen 1 was localized, the localizers decided to mix together Red and Green with Blue. The catchable Pokemon, an idea of 2 versions, came from Red and Green, while the improved performance, engine, and sprites came from Blue. To make things even more confusing, the localizers changed the names of the games, from Red and Green to Red and Blue. To be perfectly honest, I do find the contrast between Red and Blue better looking than the contrast of Red and Green. It's just caused a lot of confusion to fans over the years, even more so when the remakes came out and kept the Japanese names. Then we have Pokemon Yellow, a true anomaly, especially in Japan. In the West, its existence makes more sense, being the typical third version of a Pokemon game. But in Japan, they already had Blue, making Yellow a fourth version. Yellow is a weird special edition overall. We've already discussed having Pikachu as your starter, your rival having an Eevee, and being able to get all three of the main starters, and yet, there are plenty more differences. Color is the biggest. In battle, sprites are in full color, while in the overworld, sprites have limited color. At the very least though, the overworld hue changes from town to town to a shade of color that the town is named after, or very close. Yellow fixes a number of glitches or flaws from Red and Blue, like the soft lock at the Safari Zone, or Charizard not being able to learn Fly. Some trainers have slightly different teams, some sprites got redesigns, and many elements from the anime are included. I've already mentioned some. Officer Jenny replaces some of the generic cops. The Nurse Joys are much more Joy-like, and Jesse and James show up at various points to fight the player. And yes, they have a Meowth. Between the three versions, it's a hard pick for me. While I like Red and Blue more for feeling more authentic, and having the rival starter system, the improvements Yellow made can't be ignored. And overall, I'm glad I chose Yellow. Just like I chose Crystal and Emerald and Platinum in those videos. I guess I should also take the time to discuss my personal story of how I first got to play this game, since I'm sure from the way I've described it so far, it seems very confusing and contradictory. Basically, as a young kid, I wasn't allowed to partake in Pokemon because my mom thought it was evil. My first exposure to the series was from the Smash games. When I was in late elementary school, I got a Wii with internet access, and began watching Let's Plays of the games, creepypastas, and anime, so I do have childhood nostalgia of the franchise, just in a weird, window shopping kind of way. In middle school, Red and Blue came out on the 3DS Virtual Console, and with an eShop card, I was able to secretly buy the game and get to play it, and oh boy did I have a blast, even if I was older and playing a super outdated game. The next year, Gold and Silver came out on the 3DS, so I secretly bought that game too, or at least somewhat secretly, because the day it launched, at least the Virtual Console version, I was on a fishing trip with my family. I thought that I'd get to download it the morning before we left, but it did not launch on the game shop and wasn't available for download until noon of that day, and I was pretty pissed. So I had to resort till around noon that day, had to go until I think a Walmart bathroom or Target bathroom, hook up to the internet and then download it there. And I even like lied to my family members about it basically being like Super Mario Bros or something. And yeah, then I got to play it, and even then, it was a pretty great memory. After that, I decided to continue playing the games in order. Being a teenager now with a part-time job, I was able to do so, although I did kind of stop playing the series after the 3DS, and I still haven't actually played any Pokemon game on the Switch yet. I will someday, just not today. In retrospect, I am glad I got to play these games in order, because there's no way that I'd have the same love or appreciation of Gen 1 or 2 if I got to play, say, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire first. For this video, I'm actually playing this on a legitimate cart, and not only that, I'm using something I wish I would have tried a long time ago, the Gameboy interface. With it, you can play Game Boy carts on your GameCube in much better quality, and without the pesky, expensive Game Boy player disc. You don't need to mod your console either. All you need is the physical cartridge slot of the Game Boy player, a memory card that has the files installed, and a game to load the data in a certain way that starts a GBI up. The easiest is with Wind Waker. All you have to do is press start to activate it. It looks great. No cumbersome border, no interlacing, and the colors are less washed out. Now, if only I knew about this when I made my Emerald video, or FireRed, or in the case of FireRed, I wish I would have at least used something to record it with other than a damn DVD recorder. The evil Pokemon organization of Kanto is perhaps the most iconic, Team Rocket. On one hand, they're the most generic group, with a simple goal. The line's more up with organized crime than any grandiose plan to destroy the universe or some ideological struggle. On the other hand, in a lot of ways, Team Rocket's plain, unadulterated evil that they wear on their sleeves is refreshing to come back to. It's kind of like modern movies with sympathetic villains. Sure, they can be great and bring conflict, yet if done too often, feel quite cliché. Which is what made villains like Jack Horner from Puss in Boots 2 so beloved. Team Rocket only exists to steal, to bully, and to take as much control of the region as they can. They take the Silph Co president hostage, they disturb souls in Pokemon Tower, they run a gambling ring in Celadon, they created Mewtwo, and they kill Pokemon, and they abuse Pokemon. Who's in charge of Team Rocket? Giovanni, a ruthless mob boss, with an unfortunate receding hairline, and Kanto in his back pocket. You fight him directly, 3 separate times, in Celadon, in Saffron, and finally in Viridian, where he's the secret 8th and final gym leader. Giovanni uses ground types, his mons are high leveled, and overall, it's a fun battle, and he thinks so too, choosing to disband Team Rocket, and resigning as their leader right after, as he can no longer face his underlings after losing so much. Which turned out to be a lie, because in the next game, his gang basically begged for him to come back, even storming the radio tower to broadcast their message for him to come back, which is kind of cute in an evil kind of way. Alright, only one place left to go, the Pokemon League, again. Or the first time maybe, cause I don't know what order you guys are watching these videos in. Anyway, Kanto's victory road isn't all that bad honestly. Surprising, I know. The level creep starts to get pretty substantial. However, it's not as bad as it seems, since having good moves and typing can overcome a 20 level gap, a lot more than in future games. Which is without a doubt for the better because of the whole, there's only a limited amount of trainers with no way to rematch them. This trend continues with the Elite Four. Lorelei uses ice types, but a lot of her mons are dual ice water, so fire isn't a showstopper. Bruno's fighting mons just get trounced with anything psychic, as do Agatha's ghost types. Lance can be tough, with his high-level dragon types, equipped with Hyper Beam and Blizzard. But once he's down, it's champion time. The identity of the champion, unlike a lot of future games, is unknown, leaving the player the entire game to wonder who exactly holds the title. Well, it's your rival. Always being one step ahead, they've stolen the title of champion from you before you even got there, so you and him face off one last time to see who the true greatest Pokemon master of Kanto really is. His team is balanced, including coverage of nearly every type, and depending on who his starter is, he'll have 2 other team members of the other type to cover fire, grass, or water, or in yellow, fire, water, grass, and electricity. And an Alakazam for good measure. Yeah, an OP psychic type with no weaknesses. Like I mentioned previously, it doesn't matter if you're 15 to 20 levels under-leveled. With good type coverage, moves, and an OP psychic type, it's totally doable with next to no grinding. Hell, as a kid, I remember beating him in the high 30s, although I did have a Moltres on me too. After beating Blue, Professor Oak comes by to scold his grandson for failing to realize what Pokemon battles are all about, to raise his Pokemon with love and trust. Red then takes his spot as the Pokemon League champion. His team is recorded in the Hall of Fame, and the credits roll. As for the postgame, well, Kanto's is depressing, at least in Gen 1. There's almost nothing new to do, other than catch those legendaries, 3 of which you can actually catch before beating the game. But oh well, I do what I want, it's my channel. Articuno can be caught in the Sevi Islands, Zapdos in an abandoned power plant near Cerulean City, and Moltres in Victory Road. In the case of Moltres, it seems a little weird for it to be slapped in the middle of Victory Road, and not its own dungeon, and it's led some to theorize that the devs just ran out of time and space on the cartridge. Even more so, since in FireRed and Leaf Green, Moltres gets its own new dungeon on one island, making this theory plausible. The one legendary you can't catch until after the Elite Four, and the only post-game unlockable is Mewtwo. This cave in Cerulean City opens up, full of super strong Pokemon, and it really sucks that you can't really use repels to ward off encounters, since they don't work on wild mons higher leveled than yours. It felt more like I was playing Mother 1 than Pokemon when I was in here. At the end of a long and frankly tedious dungeon lies Mewtwo, a man-made abomination, created from Mew's DNA. It's level 70, and knows Psychic, Barrier, Recover, and Swift. Psychic in particular will probably kill half your team in one blow. Usually, catching Mewtwo is a pain in the ass, so it's advised that you save your Master Ball for it. Not me though. Yeah, I might not have any use for my Master Ball considering that I've already caught the other legendaries, yet I've never caught Mewtwo without it before, and I love to suffer apparently. For whatever reason though, I caught Mewtwo pretty damn fast, on one attempt in battle. Not quite sure what I expected, but I'm not complaining. After catching the legendaries, your save file is basically over, as there's nothing else to do in single player, other than refight the Elite Four over and over again, or catch wild Pokemon. You can't refight any trainers, there aren't any fancy side modes or minigames, you don't even get a congratulations from your mom or Professor Oak. Quite often, after finishing a save file of a Gen 1 game, I never come back to it, just because there's not really anything left to accomplish. It's a very anticlimactic, and frankly depressing end to the journey. But hey, as they say, it's the journey that matters, not the destination. An RBY is always a fun journey, and while it might not have stood the test of time, it's one of my favorite games of all time, as well as my #1 favorite OG Game Boy game. Compared with a lot of other 8-bit RPGs like Mother or Dragon Quest, it has far less flaws, or at least its flaws are far easier to look past. There's a minimalist charm to its visuals and gameplay, and its simplicity makes it easy to pick up. Overall, the Kanto games are my 3rd favorite Pokemon games, right after Jodo and Hoenn, although I have to admit that this playthrough is the least fun I've ever had playing before. I've had to work a lot lately. I'm a cynical adult now, and maybe most of all, I've played through it so many times that it feels a lot more mundane, just going through the motions, which is sad. If you want to play through the original Gen 1 games, emulation is probably the best choice, since the carts are pretty pricey, plus they use save batteries that dry up after a few years, losing all your progress and needing to be replaced. While they did come out on a 3DS Virtual Console, the eShop has been dead for a while now. In 2004, we got remakes on the GBA, FireRed and Leaf Green, which fix almost every issue of the original titles, along with adding a crap ton of new content. I'd recommend playing these versions instead. In fact, I made a video on it 4 years ago as a teen, so go check it out, or not because I was a little obnoxious with my voice back then. And considering in this video how bad my voiceover has been, that's saying a lot. In 2018, the Kanto games got another remake, this time taking more inspiration from Yellow, Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. These are very bizarre installments, taking elements from Pokemon Go as well. However, I actually haven't gotten around to playing it, or any of the Switch Pokemon games yet, so I can't comment myself on how good they are. Possibly in the future, I'll cover it if you guys want me to. And if you liked the video, be sure to give it a like, comment, share it with your non-existent friends, and check out my other Pokemon videos like the next game in the series, Pokemon Crystal. Oh, and also, I'm thinking of putting this video in a compilation of all my retrospectives of the Pokemon games on the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. So if you're watching that, and you're wondering what the hell is going on, and why the video has like an hour or so left, there's your heads up. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later, or if you're watching that compilation video, I'll see you in like 10 seconds. Either way, see ya. Sequels aren't easy to make. A lot of the time, it's hard to follow up something so great with something just as good. At the same time though, it can also be just as good, if not better, as the first installment, since now the devs have had time to look at the flaws, things that didn't work, and things that people didn't like from the first, while at the same time, coming up with new ideas to incorporate in the sequel. When it comes to video games, a lot of the time the latter is the case, and one of the best examples of this is the second generation of Pokemon. When Pokemon Red and Blue were made, Game Freak didn't quite have the same time or resources to make the game as perfect as they wanted, but with the massive, unparalleled, godly success of the game, its sequel will get everything it needed to be a masterpiece. And Gold and Silver sure are, with it being many people's favorite Pokemon game, especially its remake on the DS, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But do the originals on the Game Boy Color still hold up? Well, today let's find out and take a look at the third installment of Gen 2, Pokemon Crystal. To get things off to a great start, Crystal is my favorite opening cutscene of a Pokemon game ever. At first, it's kind of creepy with these unknown and an unknown beast moving across the field, but then he moves across the screen in a pretty good looking animation for the Game Boy Color. The music starts to pump you up, the unknown spell out Crystal, and then the title screen. In tradition with the rest of the franchise, you get a cutscene with the regional professor. Well, actually this time no, because while there is a regional professor of this game, named Elm, the one that guides you to start is Oak. I guess even the game designers realized no one would like Elm. But anyway, one big thing this generation introduced, although only in Crystal, is the ability to play as a girl. Now, I was tempted to choose to play as her for this playthrough, but if I did, no one would ever let me hear the end of it, so I'm not going to. Oh, you know in the first game Oak forgets his own grandson's name? Well, here he oversleeps. Yeah, I think Oak needs some medication from a doctor. It's too bad those don't exist in the Pokemon world. They're all Pokemon nurses for only Pokemon. I mean, there was like the doctor guy from the anime, but if I wouldn't let him do anything to me, or else you're probably gonna die. Stepping out of their house, the player finds themselves in New Bark Town, the first city in a new region west of Kanto, Jodo. And I love this town to death. Everyone just seems so friendly and wholesome. And the music is one of the most nostalgia-inducing tunes of all time. It makes you feel like a young kid again and brings you back to better times when you don't have a care in the world and there's still so much wonder in it. The main character of the game is Gold, who despite being the star of everyone's favorite Pokemon game is always forgotten. I think his design is pretty cool, especially his back sprite at the start of a battle. It looks so good for being 8-bit. And while I know his name is actually Ethan, I'm just gonna call him Gold because it sounds a lot cooler. And he's also very popular with all the ladies. Just look at how many girls think he's cute. And man, what I wouldn't give to be him. His female counterpart varies on a version. In Gold and Silver, she doesn't exist at all. In Crystal, her name is Chris, and in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, a new female protagonist named Lyra took her place. Your rival in this game is awesome though. While I don't mind later rivals being super nice, I think I still prefer them being somewhat of a jerk. Silver though is the most villainous rival of the whole series. At the start of the game, you can see him outside of Professor Elm's lab. You talk to him, he kicks you away. This is one of the only times in the series where a trainer is actually violent to another. Later he breaks into Elm's lab and steals a starter Pokemon. I don't know how he actually managed to do that, but at least that Pokemon won't be left on the table forever, so I mean there's that, and so good for him. Throughout the journey you fight him and he builds up his team, which isn't bad I must say. Out of every rival though, I think he probably has the most hatred of the main character, but even so, he goes through a bit of character development, slowly building his trust of his Pokemon. By the end of the game, his relationship with Gold is not of hatred anymore, at least not as much as it was at the start, but out of actually battling, having some amount of respect for him. One cutscene only found in Heart Gold and Soul Silver actually shows him going back to Elm's lab to return his stolen Pokemon, only for Elm to let him keep it, which is pretty heartwarming. His backstory is pretty sad honestly. He's actually the son of Giovanni, the former leader of Team Rocket. Now having that as your dad doesn't exactly set you up to have a great moral compass, but it gets even worse. 3 years previously, when Red defeats Giovanni at the Viridian City Gym, he disbands Team Rocket and straight up abandons him. As for his mother, it's never directly stated who she is. She could honestly be anyone, because Giovanni could get pretty much all the women he could ever want with all his money and stuff. But, I mean, she would need to have red hair, since he doesn't have red hair. But a strong fan theory is one of the executives in Team Rocket you see later in the game is his mother, which would make sense with her red hair and all. It's not surprising that Silver turned out the way he did, which is really sad, but it's good to see him change for the better, at least to the point he did. Like with every generation, the starters are one of the most important aspects of the game, and this game's are okay. They're not as great as in other generations though. The starter I usually go with is Cyndaquil, the fire type. There's not really anything that's unique about it other than it evolving into its second form a bit earlier than the rest, that being Quilava, and then into its final form, Typhlosion. He's the best choice though, since he can learn moves like Thunder Punch or Earthquake to cover its weaknesses. Next is Totodile, which is what I went with for this playthrough. It evolves into Croconaw, and then into FireRed. It's not bad, but there are tons of other good water types in Jodo, a lot more than fire types, so Cyndaquil is the best way to go. I only chose Totodile just for variety's sake, because I've played as Typhlosion so many times. And after that, the weakest of the three is Chikorita, and its later forms of Bayleaf and Meganium. I've never chosen Chikorita as my starter, but its stats just aren't great. It doesn't learn that good of moves, and to make things even worse, it's weak to a lot of gyms, especially early on. And even though no one's asking for this, I'm gonna mention the rest of my team anyway, because why not? Firstly, I caught Pokemon on my team, but I've wanted to try out for a long time, Gengar. Gengar is the evolved form of Haunter, but it only evolves when traded, and that's something I've been able to do for years, because I have had multiple copies of this game. But this time, I just traded over Haunter from like my old 3DS Virtual Console version of Gold, the first version of the game I played, and then, yeah, I got a Gengar. Gengar is awesome though. I taught it Shadow Ball to destroy Psychic types and Curse to bring down Pokemon that don't go down easily. Another Pokemon I had to trade over was Houndoom, a Fire Dark type that's super strong, but you can't get it until the post-game, hence why I had to transfer it over to use it early on. I also tried Sawtooth for the first time, although this game probably wasn't the best time to try it out because it really doesn't learn that good of moves in this game. And it's really not that awesome of a Pokemon, so I probably should have gone with something else. But Victory Bell wasn't a Pokemon I was actually planning on keeping the whole game. It was just that one Pokemon we have at the beginning, when there aren't a whole lot of other Pokemon available, and it just kind of grew on me. But it took forever to finally get a Leaf Stone from that one girl. And lastly, like every single time I've ever played for Gen 2, I chose an Espeon. It's a great Pokemon with its psychic attacks obliterating everything, but it takes a long time and a lot of work to evolve. In Goldenrod, you get an Eevee from Bill, and you can evolve it into a multitude of different forms, one of them being Espeon, but to evolve it into Espeon, you have to raise its friendship to the max, well, almost the max, in the daytime. And to do that, you have to give it haircuts, walk around a lot, level it up, and fight without letting it faint, especially against gym leaders and stuff like that. And let me tell you, it takes forever for it to evolve, especially in Gen 2, wow. For this playthrough, it didn't even evolve, my Eevee didn't evolve into Espeon until Victory Road. And in the tradition with the rest of the Pokemon retrospectives of naming my psychic types after Earthbound characters, I named it Ness. I really hope I don't make too many more of these, or I'm gonna be running out of names here soon after I only 4 more videos I can make before I run out of names for my psychic types. Alright, now on to new things this generation added, which is more than any other Pokemon game in the series by a huge margin. Firstly, the graphics are much better than they were in Red and Blue. Everything's in color, and I love the way sprites in battle look, with a lot of detail, color, and fluent animation. A lot of gameplay aspects were refined too. You now have a number of different pockets in your pack for different items. One for HMs and TMs, one for key items, one for Pokeballs, and one for everything else. Berries are also a new addition. There are many different types that have different effects. Some of them restore health, or others cure status conditions. The only issue they have in this game is how they don't have their own pocket in the bag, so you can't hold on to as many as you'd like. In addition to berries, there's also apricorns. You find them on various trees throughout Jodo, and there are a number of different types, just like berries. You can take them to Hoenn and Azalea Town, and you'll turn it into a special kind of Pokeball the next day. Some of these balls are better for catching water Pokemon, others for ones that move fast, and others for low-level Pokemon. But that's not all the gameplay changes though. Dark and Steel types are added, Ghost types are now actually effective against Psychic types. You can assign a key item to select. Pokemon now have genders, you can breed Pokemon and get an egg out of it that hatches eventually. There's new moves, new Pokemon, hold items, and for the first time in the series, shinies. One aspect I don't like about the gameplay is the whole phone system. I mean, it's a cool idea, but it's so annoying to get random phone calls all the time. The thing that probably left the biggest impact on the franchise though after breeding is the time cycle, which I've already talked about in every Pokemon retrospective video I've made so far, so I'll keep it brief. In the game, things change in real time, with different Pokemon appearing at different times of day. There's also a number of different events that take place not only at different times of day, but different days of the week as well. Now, while I like the hourly cycle, I think the weekly cycle is a bit much. I hate having to wait until certain days to do stuff like pay the move tutor to teach certain moves and stuff. Thankfully, the weekly cycle was cut in later games, which is for the better to be honest. I still love the day and night cycle though, it immerses you in the game more, and I like the way things look at night. However, there is one major problem that this causes to the original Game Boy Color cartridges, because it takes a lot of juice to preserve the clock data, and drains a save battery a lot faster than most other Game Boy games. It will die within 5 to 10 years most of the time. So whenever you buy an original copy of this game, be sure it comes with either a new battery or solder a new one in before starting a new playthrough. For this video, I'm playing the 3DS Virtual Console version, so I wouldn't have to worry about that, and since it only costs like $10 instead of $100. But I do have to mention just how dark and dull this version of the game looks. I even had to color correct it and sharpen it. Well, actually, I didn't sharpen it. I made it the first 2 recordings look like crap, and then so if you're wondering why some stuff in the video looks a bit different than others, that's why. But I had to color correct it in OBS, and that still wasn't enough. I had to go color correct it more when I was editing this video, so yeah. And there's this annoying freaking car in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but yeah, I really wish I would have just gone out and spent $100 whatever, or had the courage to delete my old save file on my actual legit copy of this game and just play it on a Game Boy player, because honestly I think that looks a lot better. So regret. But let's move on. The thing I like the most about this game is the atmosphere. I love the way the sprites look, the various locations throughout the game, and most of all the music, especially the random encounter theme. This theme right here is, in my personal opinion, the best random encounter theme not only in the Pokemon series, but in any RPG I've ever played. It pumps your adrenaline up, and the first few seconds are total ear candy. It just has this nostalgic late 90s, early 2000s vibe, mixed with that classic 8-bit feel. It's probably one of the most ambitious and well-made 8-bit games of all time. If you think about it, Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal are the last 8-bit games to have been a massive sensation. Now back to locations. Jodo has a lot of great ones, and one of my favorites in the adventure is a dance theater. I like the traditional Asian aesthetic, which is something that's surprisingly not very common in the Pokemon world despite the first 4 games taking place in Japan. You also get to fight the 5 Kimono sisters, each of them using a different evolution of Eevee. Another cool place is Bellsprout Tower with monks, and its shaking pillar is enchanting, but doesn't exactly seem very safe or stable. Another tower lies in Ecruteak City, known as Burnt Tower. In the basement lie 3 legendary Pokemon, Suicune, Raikou, and Entei, but they all run away, so I'll cover them later. But my favorite place of all is the Ruins of Alph, a mysterious ancient labyrinth with some slightly unsettling music and much to discover. In one room in the ruins is a tile puzzle, and solving it creates a hole in the floor, which leads back to the main room. Only now a new Pokemon can be encountered, Unknown. It's probably the worst Pokemon in the whole series. It just sucks so bad, and its only gimmick is there being a number of different physical appearances of it, and each of those appearances look like a corresponding letter in the alphabet, hence why this place is called the Ruins of Alph. Some more rooms have tile puzzles of their own, which unlock even more forms of Unknown, and there are also some secret messages that tell the story of the tomb. It's not anything special, but it does add mystery to the place. The thing that makes this place kinda creepy though is what happens if you take out and try to listen to the Poke Radio here. Most channels are the same, but in 13.5 you get this. Both Bellsprout Tower and the Ruins of Alph would go on to be big elements in one of the most famous creepypastas of all time, Pokemon Lost Silver, which is something I was weirdly obsessed with when I was 12, and to this day, that depiction of gold with no limbs, pale white skin, and bloody eyes still fascinates me for some reason. Maybe if you guys want, I'll talk about it in another video someday, I don't know. Moving on, I think it's time we discuss Jodo's gym leaders, and they're pretty hit and miss to be honest, especially when it comes to typing. The first one you fight is Falkner. He uses flying type, so you better think of something you chose Chikorita, although his Pokemon are super low level, even for this point in the game. And one thing I really don't get is why the team he gives you after winning is Mud Slap, which is a ground type move and not a flying type one. Second up is Bugsy, who, as his name implies, uses bug types, and because of that he's also super easy, especially considering most of his team isn't even fully evolved. The gym leader that comes next though is quite different, and is someone that everyone loathes. Whitney. She only uses 2 normal type Pokemon, the first being a Clefairy that goes down really fast. What comes next though is her Miltank, which is as fear-inducing as Cynthia's Garchomp. Its Stomp does quite a bit of damage. It can use Attract to immobilize your Pokemon, if it's the opposite gender at least, and can use Milk Drink to restore health, but thankfully none of those 2 latter options happen to me during this fight. Worst of all though, by far, is Rollout. It doesn't do that much damage to start off, but each turn of damage it does doubles for the next 5 turns before resetting. This means by the 4th or 5th turn, maybe even by the 3rd turn, her Miltank using Rollout, it'll pretty much insta-kill anything you throw at it, unless it's really high level, they're like a Steel type or a Rock type or something. So to beat her, you have 3 options. Either you get your team ridiculously strong and knock your Miltank out fast, or you can be cheap and spam either Mud Slap to lower its accuracy, or use Curse to guarantee its death in a few turns. I used a 3rd method in this playthrough, and it worked out okay. The only problem with it is that Curse doesn't do any damage if the opposing Pokemon faints, so it was kind of a close call there towards the end. I'd say the Mud Slap method probably works the best though, honestly, and I'd still say grind a lot for this fight. I will admit 2 things though. First, I've actually never struggled with this fight much. Maybe it's just because I tend to overlevel early on when playing these games, or maybe it's just because I've been using the Mud Slap method a lot, or maybe it's just because of dumb luck, I don't know. And second, I had a huge crush on her as a kid. She just seemed so cute and friendly. It's hard not to like her. Well, I mean, if it wasn't for her crying after you win, and calling you a child despite her being the one bawling her eyes out. And according to the internet, she's like 20, so basically the same age as I am right now, and acting more immature than like any other character in Pokemon that's ever existed. You know what though? I think I'd still go for her. I better cut that out of the video. The next gym leader is Morty. There's not much to say about him other than he uses ghost types. In a team, he hands out a Shadow Ball, the first awesome ghost type move in the franchise. After that, we have Chuck. Imagine Crasher Wake, only not having as severe of mental problems, a wife, and actually being a fighting type leader instead of water type one. Gym leader 6 and waifu number 2 is Jasmine. You can't challenge her the first time you meet her, instead having to go fetch some medicine for a sick Pokemon from across the sea. I wish it was that easy to cure pets in real life. When you finally do get to challenge her, she's one of the easiest in the series, all things considered. Her team is like really high level too, but they're steel type, so there's a few fire type moves will take out all of them pretty easily. Fire types also destroy Price, the ice type user, 7th gym leader and creepy old man. And the last gym leader of all, and waifu number 3, is Claire of Blackthorn City. Her team is pretty good, consisting of high-level dragon types with good moves. I also love the way her gym looks too while we're at it. And yeah, but what ruins her is how she's a total bitch when she loses, refusing to hand out the gym badge unless you get a dragon's fang from the dragon's den. She does get scolded by the elders at least, so there's that. One area of weakness this game does have that I do have to address is the story and regional team. There isn't really any main plotline other than to become the champion, and to stop Team Rocket. That's right, they come back for this game. You encounter them for the first time at Azalea Town, where they're kidnapping Slowpoke and selling their tails. After stopping them, Silver comes along and states just how much he hates Team Rocket, showing how much pain they've caused him. Later on in Mahogany Town, you encounter them again, only this time they're broadcasting strange signals in a lake of rage to force Magikarps to evolve into Gyarados. On the plus side, you get to catch a shiny Gyarados here, which, let's be honest, is the only shiny many of us have ever caught. You and Lance clean Team Rocket out of their base, and Silver shows up and fights Lance, and this is where he starts to change for the better. The final showdown with Team Rocket is almost immediately after this, when they take over the Radio Tower and Goldenrod. Here you give them the final blow, and a new ringleader of Team Rocket, who doesn't even have a name by the way for some reason, disbands Team Rocket, just like Giovanni before him. And that's the end. Well, I mean, at least of Team Rocket. After this, though, the director of the tower gives Gold a clear bell. If you return to Ekritique and go into the second tower there, known as Tin Tower, the monks now let you in. The legendary beasts are encountered once again, only this time Suicune can be battled and caught. I screwed up though, and forgot to save before entering. Ran out of Pokeballs and had to do like an hour of things all over again, so yeah, that's a recurring theme throughout like all my videos, is me forgetting to save and then have to redo a lot because I screw up, so I really need to stop doing that. Well, with that, there's only one thing left to do. Beat the Elite Four. Jodo's the only region so far that doesn't have its own league. Instead, you enter Kanto and take on the Indigo League. The one thing that's a bit annoying, at least at first, is after entering Kanto, you can't fly back to places in Jodo. Thankfully though, it's not that long of a trip to get back at least. What I like most about the Victory Road of this game though is instead of being a giant long cave full of ace trainers, it's a short one, without much except for a rival battle with Silver. All of those super strong ace trainers are on a route outside, and there's a place to get healed as well. It's the least frustrating and easiest Victory Road of all time. I don't know why later Victory Roads are like they are in the first game despite this being a lot better. Anyway, even though a Pokemon League is in the same location as Gen 1, almost all of the Elite Four have been replaced. The first member is Will, a psychic type user and the one who gets blitzed the easiest, at least in my case because like half my team knew Bite. Why they cut lore alive for him is something I'll never understand. The second member is actually Koga, the old poison type gym leader of Fuchsia City in Red and Blue, but he got promoted to the Indigo League somehow. After beating him, you fight the only Elite Four member who was actually in the Elite Four originally, Bruno. He's a fighting type user, so if you have a psychic type, this is pretty easy. The fourth and final member, and waifu number 4, is Karen. With a name like that, you'd expect her to be, well, a Karen, but she's pretty chill. She's the only dark type specialized trainer in the whole game, and for some reason it took until like Gen 8 for there to be a dark type gym leader. She's the toughest to beat since Dark is only weak to bug and fighting, neither of which I usually have on my team. The league champion is Lance. Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier that he actually got promoted to champion. Well, oops. This battle can be really annoying. Lance is cheap. He spams Hyper Beam, Outrage, and full restores, which I didn't have to deal with thankfully, because I imagine knock his Pokemon out before her health got too low. You might ask how I did this. Well, if you have a Fear Alligator and teach it Ice Punch, this fight is a cakewalk. Well, almost. I say almost because one of the Dragonites he has Thunder. Yes, he has multiple of them, 3 to be exact. And Dragonite isn't even supposed to evolve until level 55 anyway. Despite how cheap Lance is, he's the easiest champion to beat of like all time, even without spamming Ice Punch. In the end, this battle is pretty decent, but also kind of meh at the same time. I mean, I like Lance, but he's not really champion material. Elite 4 material, yeah, but don't worry though, because there'll be something else later on that's much better and makes up for it though, so stay tuned. Once Lance is beaten, there's the whole victory cutscene where a professor comes in, which is Professor Oak and not Elm, because I think no one likes Elm. Your teams are added to the Hall of Fame, and the credits play, you know the drill. But if you thought this adventure is anywhere near over, oh boy, are you wrong. What I think is the #1 reason why this is so many people's favorite Pokemon game is the fact that you get to explore almost the entirety of Kanto in the post-game. It's not exactly the same as Kanto was in Gen 1, however, with a lot being different as it's set 3 years in the future. Lavender Town has been completely transformed, with Pokemon Tower no longer being a gravesite, and instead being a radio tower of all things. So they basically had to dig up a bunch of corpses and move them to this house. I mean, that kind of sounds like grounds for a poltergeist-like creepypasta of Pokemon. One of those probably already exists, and it probably sucks. I don't know. The power plant is no longer abandoned, and it's now operational. Well, it was at least. The last Team Rocket member stole a machine part, and you have to go get it back. After returning it, you can now ride the magnet train back and forth between Kanto and Jodo. A lot of areas like the Saphire Zone, Cinnabar Island, and certain tunnels are closed off, so you can't explore pretty much anything in Kanto in Gen 1, but let's be honest, Kanto as it is here is still a way better post-game than any other generation. You can challenge with Kanto gym leaders too, although their Pokemon are obviously way stronger than they are in Gen 1, or else this would be like ridiculously easy and there wouldn't really be much of a point of it. Since Koga got promoted to Elite 4, his daughter Janine took his place, and Blue takes Giovanni's place. All of them except for Blue are super easy though. Actually, even Blue's like super easy. I only lost actually I don't even think I lost any Pokemon, I don't know. It's been like a couple days since it, and I'm tired, but all of them are pretty easy. And most of that is just because the order you're supposed to do them in is a bit different in Gen 1. And I explored every single route before taking any of them on, so I was pretty over leveled. Okay, let's get to something I haven't been looking forward to at all. The legendaries, specifically 2, Raikou and Entei. Both of them are roaming legendaries, a mechanic I despise with every fiber in my being. After running them out of the burnt tower, Raikou and Entei can now be encountered on a random route in Jodo. The key word is random though, and there are so many routes that you could go the whole game without running into them. I thankfully managed to run into Entei while playing the game normally, but it took like an hour of searching for Raikou to finally find him. Anyway, once you finally do encounter them, they run away after only one turn. On the plus side though, they do keep any damage you do to them, although not status conditions. They don't even bother using moves like Mean Look to keep them from running away, because they know Roar to scare your Pokemon off the battlefield. After fleeing, they run off to another random route, and thankfully you can see where they are off the Pokedex. One problem though, whenever a player enters a new route or goes somewhere else, they move somewhere else. So the only way to find them is to fly off to random places and hope you just so happen to enter a route where they randomly appear there. Well, kind of, it's not totally random, and there is a guide to sort of help you out, but these tips don't work all the time. At least in Crystal, there's only 2 roamers, because in Gold and Silver, Suicune was one too, instead of being encountered at the Tin Tower. I also used my Master Ball in Raikou, so Entei was the only one I had to track down and catch, which still took a few hours to do. I love the rest of the game to death, I really do, but catching a legendary beast is something I really don't enjoy doing. After you catch the beast, if you re-enter the Tin Tower, it's possible to snag yet another legendary, Ho-Oh, who I honestly thought was named Ho-Ho for years. Apparently I couldn't read as a kid. At the same time, Lugia can also be caught, but both of them are annoying to catch. They're high level, have strong moves, low capture rates, and most of all, they spam recover over and over again. My tip is to use moves like Ice Beam and just hopefully freeze them, because that helps a lot, or maybe putting them to sleep. Paralysis doesn't do anything in this generation. Don't even bother. After that, there's only one more legendary, although this one can't be obtained in most cases, at least unless you cheat or have glitches or something. Celebi. Celebi was a special event Pokemon back in the day, and unfortunately you can't catch it during normal gameplay. unless you have the 3DS Virtual Console version of Crystal. If you are playing this version, after beating the Elite Four, go to the Goldenrod City Pokemon Center and a worker there hands out a GS ball. Take this GS ball to Kurt in Azalea Town, he'll take a look at it. The next day he'll give it back, and he talks about how strange the forest is. If the player takes this ball to the shrine in the middle of the forest, Celebi appears and can be captured. It's too bad this had to be triggered by a special event only in Japan, which are words muttered way too often while discussing legendary Pokemon. With 2 regions explored, 16 gym badges collected, 5 legendary cots, 1 special event legendary cot, and Elite Four beaten, we've pretty much gone over everything to do in the game. But there's still one more thing to do. Professor Oak gives the player permission to explore a place called Mount Silver after collecting all 16 gym badges. Here you can find all sorts of strong and rare Pokemon. It's a decent place to grind overall. There's some good items, and it's a nice touch in an already amazing game. At least that's what everyone thinks. At least back in the early 2000s, before the internet spoiled this part for everyone. At the top of the mountain, in the final screen of the whole game, something catches your eye. It's a trainer, one whose sprite is very similar to Gold's. The trainer doesn't say much when you talk to him, only a series of dots. But a battle begins anyway, and then you finally realize just who this trainer is. It's Red, the protagonist of the first game. You see hints of his existence throughout Kanto, like his mother talking about how much she misses him, but it's still completely unexpected for him to be here of all places. The first Pokemon he throws out is a level 81 Pikachu. And the first thought you have immediately after this is, oh crap. Red's team was the strongest out of the first 2 games up to this point, by a huge margin, and to this day it's still one of the hardest to beat. Up to this point, most people's teams will be around the upper 40s, lower 50s, especially since all of Kanto's gyms are so easy, so there's not really much of a need to grind. I'd recommend getting them to at least the mid-50s for this battle. I didn't vote just because I wanted to see if I could do this without any grinding. His Pikachu is the highest leveled, but goes down the fastest. And its thunders sure are more accurate than they should be. Then there's his Espeon. Its psychic attacks are devastating, so bring a dark or ghost type to take it out. Third up is his hardest Pokemon, in most circumstances at least, is Snorlax. Its body slam is pretty much a one-hit KO. It can use rest to restore its health, and its status conditions too, so don't bother paralyzing it or anything. And it can even attack while asleep with Snore. Taking this thing out is a nightmare. It takes so long to chip down its HP, only for it to restore it all with rest. But there is a trick. If you have a ghost type that knows Curse, it helps out a lot. Spike comes in handy too, since it reduces its PP. Unfortunately, I got rid of that on my Gengar. It varies which Pokemon he sends out next, but most of the time it's something that's super effective, or at least not weak to what you have out on the field. His other 3 Pokemon are the Kanto starters. Red's Venusaur is the easiest to take down since it just spams Solar Beam even against a fire type. His Blastoise's Surf and Blizzard are annoying, so thank God again for Curse. And lastly, you face up against his Charizard. And this Charizard is the most terrifying thing in the whole game. All it does is spam Flamethrower, which doesn't sound too bad, but the damage it does is insane. It even takes like half of your alligator's health. Granted, it's not even level 50, but still. The only good thing is how it doesn't even have that high of special defense, all things considered, so Surf and Psychic are able to take it down, at least if your Pokemon can survive its Flamethrower. After the fight, Red doesn't say much just like before, only disappearing as mysteriously as he was encountered. Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal definitely deserve the high praise they get. The generation changed more than any other Pokemon game with the fine-tuning it did to the gameplay, but music is phenomenal. It pushed the Game Boy Color to its limit, has loads of things to do, some great characters. It is the only game in the series thus far to have 2 regions to explore. I still have loads of fond memories of the time I first got to play this game. I was 15, it was 2017, just when Pokemon Gold and Silver were gonna get released on the 3DS Virtual Console. I was so excited since this was the only way to get to play the game back then, just because of the whole Pokemon is evil thing my parents believed back then. So I remember buying a 3DS eShop card with some money I had lying around, weeks ahead of its drop on the eShop, and then I was just planning on downloading it from a 3DS, keeping it a secret from everyone. The only issue was, I was going on a fishing trip with my dad, grandpa, and uncle the same day it dropped, and the place we'd be staying at didn't have internet. The place we'd be staying at was literally like just a tent. Thankfully though, we didn't have to leave until 9 AM, and I thought I'd get to download it before leaving. Oh boy, was I mad when I realized it wouldn't be available for download until noon. I basically remember like going into a Walmart bathroom to download it, and then I finally got to play it on a road trip there. I had a lot of fun. It was a fun memory. I can't think of this game without thinking of that time. There's even like this one thing that happened during a trip where my uncle like stepped on something, cut his toe open, and then I saw him and he asked me to go get some help from someone. So I went over to my grandpa and I told him what's going on, and basically all I said was my uncle's name cut his toe, and then I like walked off. And I don't remember where I was going, but yeah, and then he ended up having like cut part of his toe, like not like just some skin and stuff, not like part of his toe with like the knife. Then he like cut that later the night when we ate summer sausage. So yeah, fond memories overall. And the fishing trip only lasted like one day though, because everyone else was like really overheated because yeah, them being old and stuff compared to me. It was a fond memory overall. Overall, I'd say Gen 2 is my second favorite Pokemon game, with Gen 3 being slightly better in my personal opinion. I will say though that I didn't have as much fun playing this game as I usually do, probably because of how many times I've played it, so I wish I would have waited off a little before doing this video, or at least played Heart Gold and Soul Silver instead. Oh, and I really regret playing the Virtual Console version. The color just looks so bad and everything looks terrible, so sorry about that. If you guys want me to make more Pokemon retrospective videos, tell me in the comments below, and also tell me which game you want me to do. Although it's gonna be a while, probably till the summer before I make any more of these videos, because let me tell you, I need a break from Pokemon for a while. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I wish everyone a great year. Pokemon was a franchise that I never got to experience much as a kid. My mother heard from them televangelists that the games and show had the power to cause brainwashing, violence, and demon possession, because why not? So, as you can guess, it's one of the many things that I was banned from watching or playing as a kid. Even in Smash Bros, I never played as Pokemon characters unless I absolutely had to. If I had unlocked characters and stuff, and whenever I did do that, I had to mute the TV or unplug the AV cable or the audio cable, the white one and red one or whatever, and just hope no one walked in. It wasn't until middle school where I finally was able to experience the internet without any censorship, and I realized something. The games weren't evil after all. And then I started watching the anime and watching other people's let's plays of the game, and I really liked it. My first Pokemon game was actually the 3DS Virtual Console version of Red when I was 14. By then you don't have quite the same sense of nostalgia when you first experience something. So I'm really sad I'll never have the same connection as a lot of other people because the Pokemon series is awesome. Sure, some fans can go overboard, and most fans prefer the older games compared to the newer ones, as do I. I do love Gen 1 to death, and Gen 2 as well, with the general consensus being that the best game in the franchise is Gold and Silver. My personal favorite though is the third installment in the franchise, Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and most of all, Emerald. And I know hundreds and hundreds of people have already made their own retrospect videos on Gen 3, but I can never hope to even come close to topping, and I say screw it to that. Here's my perspective on the games as a whole, their highs, their lows, and my personal opinion of them as a whole. Alright, let's begin. To start things off, the version I'm playing, as you can all guess, unless, you're being held hostage to watch this or something. I don't know why you would be, but if you are, okay, I'm sorry. That kind of came out randomly. What the heck is wrong with me? Anyway, I'll be playing Emerald, mostly because of all the new content and all the improvements made. Those of you playing Ruby and Sapphire instead are gonna have a slightly different experience from me, so keep that in mind. Upon starting a new save, we get the typical introduction cutscene, only this time with a different professor, Birch. And of course, you get to choose your gender and name. Now, I could have named my trainer after my own name, or his official name, or Brendan, or Alpha Leaf, or something, but in honor of the great Sugar Conroy, the man who introduced me to this masterpiece, I'm gonna name my trainer after him. And a lot of people are gonna think that I'm using his footage or whatever because I'm using the Game Boy player too, so... well, never mind. Right off the bat, everything feels a lot different than the start of the previous 2 adventures. There's a heavier emphasis on the plot, with the main characters moving to the Hoenn region. But the number one thing that separates this from other Pokemon games is that you actually have a dad. Why there are so many single moms in Pokemon is anyone's guess. Your rival in this game is also much different than a hot-headed Blue, or the morally corrupt Silver. Here, your rival is the regional professor's son/daughter, who is always the avatar of the opposite gender you choose. If you choose to play as a boy, whose name is Brendan, your rival is May. If you choose to play as May, your rival is Brendan. These two were the first pair of adversaries to actually be friendly towards the player, encouraging them and giving them stuff. Sure, we might have too many friendly opponents in modern Pokemon games today, but here I feel like this dynamic works. Then there's all the shipping between the two, which is kind of weird, since they're young, you know, but I will admit, you know, it's kind of cute in a way, and I wouldn't be surprised if the developers intended for it to be canon. Still, don't go too far, guys, please, for the love of God, don't. You also have Wally, who's okay, I guess, and I can relate to him in some ways, but you barely fight him, so I wouldn't really consider him a main rival. Moving on, we have the generation starters, Torchic, Treecko, and Mudkip. Out of the 3, Mudkip is most people's preferred choice, although mine is personally Torchic. For this playthrough though, I managed to trade some other starters that I bred, or actually just when I bought this game, had another save file on there with a Mudkip, so I managed to transfer that. Then from another save file of this game, I had a Blaziken, but I bred a Torchic for that, and then I chose Treecko. So for this playthrough, I actually had all 3 starters, which made my team pretty overpowered to say the least, but I'm not complaining. In fact, I was a bit too overpowered because until you get the 2nd gym badge, any Pokemon traded won't obey you if they're above level 10. And that happened to me for quite a while until I got the 2nd gym badge. Torchic evolves into Combustion, which evolves into Blaziken, and Blaziken is one of my favorite starters ever. It's half fighting type, which can really come in handy, and I just really like it. And then you have Mudkip, which is probably, honestly, the most useful early on in the game, since it's pretty effective against most gym leaders, and it's water ground type, so it's immune to electricity and super effective against it. So I really like Mudkip. It evolves into Marshtop and then evolves into Swampert, and Swampert is a beast. And finally there's Treecko. It evolves into Grovyle and then into Sceptile, although it doesn't have a dual typing, making it the least useful of the 3 in my opinion. A problem all 3 of them share is not learning very good moves for a really long time. In fact, unless you stop them from evolving, you can't learn good moves like Flamethrower or Hydro Pump without a TM. So for a while you're stuck with moves like Water Gun, and Absorb, and Ember. And the rest of my team was good. I got a Gardevoir and named it after someone everyone on this channel knows about, at least I think they do. I also got a Skarmory, and for my final team member, a Walrein. I think I'm pronouncing that right. You know, I really don't know the pronunciations of a lot of Pokemon. Haven't watched anime in a long time. And yeah, while I did miss out on a few move types, it still worked out okay in the end. One aspect that was a step back from Gold and Silver is the time cycle. In Gold and Silver, the time cycle is super impressive. The graphics change at night compared to day. There's a weekly schedule, you can collect berries each day, and certain Pokemon can only be caught at certain times. Ruby and Sapphire does have a time system, but instead of being weekly, it's only daily. Not only that, the lighting doesn't change at night, and there are no time of day exclusive Pokemon, and not nearly as many time-based events. Honestly, other than berries and certain evolutions, Shoal Cave, and something called Mirage Island, there's not really anything based around a clock. On the bright side though, the battery used to keep the clock going when the game's off isn't a save battery. The game's save data is saved to internal memory, or flash memory I mean. So basically, when a battery goes dead, you just can't, time-based events no longer work, which is awesome. Unlike Gen 2 games where battery dies within a decade and you lose all your save data when it runs out of juice, I also sometimes get kind of annoyed by the day and night cycle, since I usually only play games in the evenings because it's the only time I can, and as such, there are certain things I can't do unless I get a day off or something, so I'm not too annoyed with the Gen 3 time system, honestly. Like with any new generation, Gen 3 added a whole bunch of new features and elements, the most impactful being abilities. Sure, I will admit that they can be overcomplicated or annoying at times, but they do add a lot to the mix. You can now run with V as well, which is awesome, and some new bikes are added, the fast Mach bike, an easier to control but slower arch bike. But that's nowhere near close to the new things added. There's double battles, the battle tent, contests, new Pokeball types, secret phases, customizable dialogue, new moves, new Pokemon, and just fun little things. Like the Pokeball type you catch a Pokemon with is the same one they come out of at the start of a match. But the thing that makes this my favorite in the franchise is the Pokémon. In Emerald at least. Something very similar was in Ruby and Sapphire, but Emerald took it a huge step forward. But Pokémon works sort of like a phone. Throughout your journey, you meet new people and write their number down. Occasionally they'll call you and sometimes even challenge you to a rematch. However, what makes it so good is the fact that you can re-challenge gym leaders. Why this feature is pretty much never used again, I'll never know. The point is, being able to re-challenge trainers makes grinding experience and especially money so much easier, and I love it. However, one thing they did not learn and did not improve upon are HMs. Now, like everyone else, I dislike HMs. An overworld feels a bit less, odd if you need a certain move to go for instead of some item or having to wait for a bridge to be fixed. In some way, it kind of feels more realistic, if that makes any sense. I do get that HM's purpose. My problem is, why does there need to be so many? This game has 8 HMs. That means if you want a team with all the HM moves, like a third of your roster's moveset is already taken. Now, you could probably get away with only using an HM slave for the ones you barely use, like Waterfall, and Dive, and Flash, maybe Strength, but I still wish there were a lot less of them. Like in any other Pokemon game, Hoenn has gyms and gym leaders, and they feel pretty solid honestly. The first gym leader, Roxanne, is your rock-type difficulty wall for people who chose a fire starter. Next is Brawly. He uses fighting types and is regarded to many as the most difficult in the series because of how much damage his Pokemon do after winning, I guess. But I'd recommend using Tailo and Ralt or Kadabra against him. Third, you have Walt, who uses electric types, and it's pretty easy honestly. Well, it depends what your team is. If you have Marshtomp, he's ridiculously easy. And then you have one of the most popular in the series, Flannery. I will admit, I had a pretty big crush on her as a teen. Hope no one's around to hear that. She uses fire types, and what I like about her is she's kind of relatable with how inexperienced she is and having just become a gym leader recently. After that, you have your dad. I really hate this fight, to be honest. He uses normal types with high attack and high HP, so you have to take him out pretty fast, but hardly anything can do that unless you're over leveled. My trick is to just spam overheat, and double kick maybe, but double kick isn't that good against this. Then you have Winnoa, and she's pretty meh overall. She's ridiculously easy, but there are a lot of other better flying type leaders, in my opinion. In Moss Deep, there's, well, I think the most over-prepared gym leader I've ever been against of all time, because my first playthrough of this game, the gym leaders in Moss Deep are Tate and Liz, and they destroyed me the first time I played this game. They used psychic types and my team just sucked against them. But this time, my team was awesome against them. First time I played this, I didn't really have any good water types or ghost types, but this time I taught Shadow Ball to Gardevoir, and I had Swampert, so I didn't even lose one Pokemon in this fight. I steamrolled them this time, so that makes me feel a lot better. And lastly, you have Wallace, or Juan, depending on which version of the game you play. He uses water types, so you'd think he's pretty easy to beat in. Well, not really. Even with a grass type Sceptile, still had some difficulty. In my first playthrough of this game, our fight devolved into a struggle stalemate with me spamming hyper potions until his Pokemon all died. So overall, I love all the gym leaders of Hoenn, and this particular rendition of the victory theme is just excellent. And all the other tunes are pretty good too, with their own distinct 32-bit style. I know I've already said this before, but visually the game looks very good too. I feel like Gen 3 has aged better than most other retro Pokemon games, with the exception of Gen 5. All the sprites are well detailed and colorful. with almost nothing looking ugly or aged. Oh, but we can't talk about this game and not mention Region's evil teams, Aqua and Magma. Unlike other evil teams who have a goal to just take over the world, both these gangs want to use the power of two very different legendary Pokemon to try to change the world into what they want it to be. Team Aqua, led by Archie, wants to flood the world and make more room for water Pokemon, while Magma, led by Maxie, wants to make more land for humans and land Pokemon. I do like the contrast between the two. It adds quite a thrill with them constantly trying to thwart each other's plans. You take it on both of them, and you run into them quite a few times in the game. They steal stuff from people, steal special orbs from Mount Prism, which is a spooky area of the game by the way, and then you raid their bases and find a Master Ball in Team Aqua's base. In Team Magma's base, they resurrect Groudon, but he doesn't obey Maxie, leading to a battle with him. Team Aqua, meanwhile, steals a submarine, but by the time you reach them, it's too late. Team Magma then tries to steal rocket fuel from a space center. You stop them, and then Steven, a significant character in the game's story, gives you HM8 Dive. It gives you the ability to go underwater, which, while I did say earlier that I hate HMs, I kind of like diving underwater. On the surface, you'll see a whole bunch of dark blue spots indicating an area you can dive down in. The seafloor below is a cool area with its lack of light, relaxing music, and it's fun to explore. In a cave deep below is Archie's sub, in a cavern, and at the end of it is Kyogre, who is resurrected as well. And like Groudon, he doesn't obey either, and leaves. Just after that, Archie gets a call from his crew about the weather. All throughout Hoenn, a downpour never seen before starts flooding the region. If nothing changes, the whole world will be flooded. Both Maxie and Archie regret their decisions and pledge to change their ways. After this, you can still move around the sea. The fast falling rain really does make you feel paranoid. However, what happens here is different depending on which version of the game you're playing. In Saphire and Emerald, the world floods, but in Ruby, instead of a flood, there's a drought with some of the creepiest music I have ever seen in a Pokemon game, heard in a Pokemon game, after the old Chateau and maybe Lavender Town, but honestly, Lavender Town never really creeped me out. But this kind of does, because, I mean, I forgot who said this once, and someone once said, it was a video, but the world being flooded isn't as bad as the drought, because if the world flooded, well then, you know, deep underwater, there'd still be water Pokemon that could survive. People would be screwed, and land Pokemon would be screwed, but, you know, water Pokemon would be fine, but with the drought, literally nothing would survive, next to nothing. So, yeah, it's kind of unnerving. In Pseudopolis, Groudon and Kyogre have a battle, with Kyogre coming out on top, hence the downpour. In the city is the Cave of Origin. In Ruby, you'll find Groudon. In Sapphire, you find Kyogre. But in Emerald, you find Wallace, the Pokemon League champion. He tells the player of a third super ancient Pokemon with the power to stop the struggle between the other two at a place called Sky Pillar. The top of the pillar is one of the most iconic legendaries in the series, Rayquaza. It flies off to Pseudopolis and stops Groudon and Kyogre from having their epic battle, unfortunately, because I really wanted to see how that ended. But he scares them so much they run off like frightened dogs, and everything goes back to normal. Unfortunately, you can't capture Groudon or Kyogre quite yet, not until you beat the Elite Four. You can in Emerald, however, catch Rayquaza before the Elite Four, which is a great thing. This time your climb up Sky Pillar is much more difficult. And it's all because of this stretch right here. You have to be on a mock bike. You can't even use the other bike, the art bike. Then you have to go as fast as possible across these cracks, and if you aren't fast enough, you move too soon or whatever, you hit this rock and then you fall down. You have to climb all the way back up, get on your bike again, and the music that keeps repeating over and over. I keep hearing the same part of the bike song in the first part of the Sky Pillar theme over and over. It drives you nuts. It takes forever to do. If that's not enough, if you finally make the first 3 bike turns, well, you have to slow down right in between these 2 cracks and fall down to ones in the middle. You make it to one's the end, you're back at the beginning of this whole thing. So, yeah, this right here is one of my least favorite parts of a Pokemon game ever. I mean, it's not that hard, honestly. It took me like, what, 12 minutes? But it's just really annoying, and I don't like it. But once it's over, the player is met with a level 70 Rayquaza to try and catch. Now at this point, your team is probably going to be around 40 or so, meaning just 1 or 2 attacks from Rayquaza can probably take out your Pokemon. It also knows rest, which is annoying, but when I did this myself during this playthrough, I had the luck of my life. I caught him in only a few turns, not even at red health. Now, if I can only find a shiny, then I'd be really lucky. I want to find a shiny someday. I've never encountered a shiny in my life. I guess in Crystal I had that Igglybuff egg, but that doesn't really count because that's a 1% chance, not a 1 in 8,000 chance. But anyway, back to this Rayquaza. This Rayquaza will destroy pretty much everything in the main game. The Elite Four. The only thing I think, the final optional battle in this game, I think, can get defeated by, but this thing is a beast. As for other Hoenn legendaries, there's 3 more you can get before beating the game. Over in this one area of the sea is a strange dive spot. Underneath is a cavern with Braille that you need to decipher. The instruction manual for the game did come with a translation guide for it. If you're like me and never had it, looking up an online guide is mandatory. First, you have to find 2 hard-to-get Pokemon. Relicanth, it can be found in certain deep sea areas with a 5% chance of running into it down here, and thankfully I found it in only a few minutes. The other Pokemon you need for this is Wailord. To get one, you have 2 choices. You can either catch a Wailmer and level it up to level 40, or you can try to catch a wild one on Route 129. The catch is that there's only a 1% chance of encountering a Wailord here. I tried for hours to try and catch one, but I never encountered even one. Then I remembered, I already had one on another copy of this game, so I just traded it over and went back to the diving area underwater. Beneath the waves is a hidden Braille message that tells the player to return to the surface. Doing so places them in a secret chamber. Use dig on the door, enter the next room, place Wailord in the front of your party and Relicanth in the back, and read the sign. This causes the cave to shake violently, and a mysterious door somewhere opens up. In various areas throughout Hoenn, caves pop up. There's one in the desert, one in the sea, and one in the marshland. In each of these, there's more cryptic confusion, like walking in a full circle around the room, or using rock smash or flash in a certain spot. Like I said earlier, these rooms contain clues of what to do in Braille, and the instruction manual, again, did come with a translation guide. I can't imagine though how it felt to do this before the internet. That must have been pretty cool. I'm sure someone managed to figure this out without a guide, and when it did, it must have felt so mysterious and magical, which is something that, while I am grateful for the modern internet and their guides, I've kind of taken away from that from newer games, although I don't want to be stuck for like 30 hours trying to figure something out in a game, so. Anyway, after you solve each puzzle, a final room opens up, revealing a new Pokemon each time. Regirock, Regice, and Registeel. They look so cool, and I feel like they really fit in a place like this. An underground tomb that's mysterious, and them being like golems is cool. Reminds me of my episode of Tetra Terror. Another cool thing about them is how they actually might represent the various epochs throughout history. Regirock is the Stone Age, Regice is the Ice Age, Registeel is the Iron Age. In later installments, more legendary titans were added. Regieleki represents the Modern Age, and Regidrago represents the Middle Ages. They also happen to have a boss, Regigaius. He's introduced in the next game in the series, but that's a topic for another day. Moving back to this game, Regirock is a rock type, obviously, because why wouldn't he be? He has good defense, and it knows Rock Throw, Curse, Ancient Power, and Superpower, the latter of the two being able to wreck your team. Well, actually, not really, because my team was over-leveled. Regice is an Ice type, obviously, because why wouldn't it be? Has good special defense, it knows Curse, Superpower, Icy Wind, and Ancient Power. And last but not least, we have Registeel. The Steel type has good defense, and like the other two, it knows Curse, Superpower, Ancient Power, alongside Metal Claw. Unfortunately, I did not have such an easy time here, unlike with Rayquaza. It took me like an hour alone just to catch Regirock. It's partially my fault just because of how over-leveled I was, and it was kind of annoying because I kept killing them over and over again, and I couldn't chip down their health to almost nothing because I would have killed them. And yeah, overall though, I kind of like the idea of having to be a detective to try to figure out how to get the Regis. The execution It wasn't done perfectly though. I think it is a bit too cryptic, especially since you need to be instruction manual to be able to figure it out. But it's cool. With that taken care of, there's only one more thing to do. Take on the Pokemon League. Like in every other Pokemon game, the player needs to get past one of the longest and most difficult dungeons in each respective game, Victory Road. Here, you fight strong trainers, solve tough puzzles that make me feel like a moron, face up against high-level wild Pokemon, and run out of repels halfway through, slowly bringing on insanity. This particular rendition of the Victory Road theme though, is a track I'll never forget. The first time I heard it was in Raw because, you know, like I said in the beginning of the video, I couldn't play Pokemon as a kid, and I could play Smash Bros, so I remember hearing this in the Subspace Emissary, and I didn't know what it was from for years until I actually played this game back when I was in high school a couple years ago. But when I heard this, it brought all of those nostalgic memories to me, and you know, it was a good time. And now I think about it, I have nostalgia. We're at time when I had nostalgia of Smash Bros, so I have nostalgia of nostalgia. And you know what, when I was having nostalgia for the first time when I was playing Smash Bros Brawl, I probably had nostalgia of an earlier time. I think like when I was playing the original Smash Bros. I probably had nostalgia when I was playing the original Smash Bros of something even earlier. And you know what, probably like 10 years from now, I'm probably gonna have nostalgia of now, so, you know, it really layers, and I'm starting to get kind of insane right now, so, let's move on. Right at the end is Wally. Remember him? Yeah, me neither. You only fight him like twice in the whole game, and yet you can rematch him unlike May/Brendan for some odd reason. I never got that, honestly. Like, why can you rematch Wally but not May/Brendan? Because May/Brendan is the main rival of this game. Speaking of that too, one thing I always found was weird is how in the final fight is just really anticlimactic. Like, I keep forgetting it's the final fight in the game because you don't even fight their final starter. Like, their starter is, you know, is the opposite of what you choose, obviously, but it never fully evolves. It gets to its second evolution, but not its third. I don't, some people think that you're originally intended to be the champion or something, and then you fight their third form of that Pokemon, but it just feels kind of incomplete, honestly. But, you know, this game is good enough to where I don't find it a major problem, but it is one thing I kind of don't like about this game. Anyway, with that done, it's time for the climax of the adventure, the Elite Four. The first member is Sydney. He uses dark types and is the easiest to beat. Second up is Phoebe. She uses ghost types and her strategy is just to annoy you. After that is Glacia. She uses ice types, and while her Pokemon are strong and her Walrein knows sheer cold, which is an instant kill move, with some smart typing she's pretty easy. And lastly, there's Drake. His Pokemon are dragon types and are strong enough to knock out your Pokemon pretty easily, especially his Salamence. Following that, it's the real final challenge, the last obstacle between a player and the endgame, the champion. In Ruby and Sapphire, the champion is Steven, who is a good choice since he's a major character throughout the game's story, but in Emerald it took the 8th gym leader of Ruby and Sapphire, Wallace, and made him the champion instead, and then placed a new gym leader at his gym. Wallace honestly doesn't work as well as Steven, especially since his team are mostly water-based. And if you have electric type or grass type, he's a piece of cake, unless you're under level. To be honest, it's on me though, because I really over-prepared for this fight. I thought it'd be way harder than it was. Still though, it doesn't quite have the same feel that was there with Blue or Cynthia or even Lance. At least the music is pretty good though, and him being too easy is way better than him being a relentless difficulty spike. After being bested, Wallace seems to take things pretty well like Lance. Professor Birch may come in to congratulate the player, the new champion and her Pokemon are added to the Hall of Fame, and the credits play. These credits are a huge step up compared to the first two games. You have some cutscenes that show off May and Brendan biking together and exploring around the world. And that's it for the main adventure. It's been quite a journey, but it's far from over. Upon restarting the game, you start off back where the adventure started in Littleroot. And now, after beating the main story, there's a lot more stuff to do post-game. Firstly, Professor Birch upgrades the Hoenn Pokedex to the National Dex. Next, if you visit the weather station, the meteorologist says something about a drought and a flood on a random route. In each of these respective areas is a secret cave and dive spot leading to Kyogre and Groudon, and this time you finally catch them, but it's only possible to catch both of them in Emerald. In Ruby, you get Groudon in the Cave of Origin, and in Sapphire, it's Kyogre in the Cave of Origin, and in both of them, it's Rayquaza you can't capture until the post-game. And after that, there's one more legendary left to capture, well, one of two actually, and you get to choose which one by answering either red or blue when your mom asks you what color the TV announcer said it was. If you chose red, it's Latias, and if you choose blue, it's Latios. And it's only possible to get one or the other per save file. Regardless of which one you pick, catching either of them isn't easy. Why? Because they're roaming legendaries. I'm going to take a quick moment to say that I think roaming legendaries is probably one of my least favorite things about the Pokemon franchise. I don't want to spend too long explaining how they work, this video is already getting long enough as it is, but to sum things up, to encounter one, you have to encounter it on a random route. There's no way of knowing where they are the first time, making the first time tracking it down a nightmare. After that, you can see where they are with the Pokedex, thankfully. That's not the worst part of it though. The worst part is how they run away after only one turn. I'm kind of thankful it's only possible to catch one of them though, so I can just use my Master Ball on the one I chose and just move on with my life. Alright, this video is starting to get a bit too long, so I'll wrap things up here soon. But before I do, here's one last major thing available in the post-game, but only in Emerald, the Battle Frontier. Here you can fight in a huge, and I mean huge variety of events. There's so much to do here, maybe too much. Whenever I get to this point, I'm always too burnt out or don't have the desire to continue on, so I've never completed everything there is to do here. Not that it's easy. The AI is hard, your opponents are always as strong as you. It takes hours and hours to get close to getting anything done, or getting to the Frontier Brains, which are basically gym leaders. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, I'm not doing this for you. I don't want to have to spend another 30 hours playing this game, just to get my ass kicked by these guys. And as a final challenge, but only in Emerald, Steven appears in the cave on Meteor Falls, and is the strongest trainer in the game, being like Red from Gold and Silver. It's a pretty intense battle overall. As you can guess, he has some strong Pokemon, the AI is pretty good, and you have to be pretty high leveled, and this is the trainer I was talking about when you can take out your Rayquaza. And yeah, I will admit, I just spammed Hyper Potions the whole time, so sue me. Pokemon Emerald is, and will most likely always be my favorite Pokemon game. There's just something about it that I can't put into words why I love it so much. I know I say that a lot, but this time, cause I didn't get to play this game until I was like in high school, so it's kind of past nostalgia, or of my childhood nostalgia, but I'd say honestly this is the last game I think I ever felt super nostalgic about. Not childhood nostalgia, like teenage nostalgia. I was about 17. I already started this YouTube channel by the time I got to play it. It was like about the time I was making like the NES and Nintendo Fury videos, you know. This generation added on to the things that made Gen 1 and 2 so great, but didn't add too much to overcomplicate things like the games that came after it. It's too bad that Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald didn't get the attention they deserved when they first came out in the early 2000s. No one hated them per se, but everyone was temporarily sick of the series by then. Nowadays though, I'm glad that it's regarded as one of the greatest installments in the franchise, and seen 2 as the best GBA game of all time. Unfortunately, my playthrough of this game for this video hasn't been as fun as it should have been. You know, I've had a lot going on in my personal life, you know. I had a family member pass away, and there's a lot of other stuff going on right now. I'm not gonna lie though, this game, it helps me, you know. It gave me something to get my mind on and off of stuff, and I am very thankful for that. I also apologize to everyone for not uploading very often these past couple months, and not uploading at all for the past month. I promise I'll try to pump out stuff more often for the rest of the year, and hopefully, you know, for quite a while. And with that, I bid you all farewell until next time, where we'll be covering the next game in the Pokemon franchise, Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I'll see you all then, everyone. Remakes, a thing everyone loves. Retro gamers love them because it gives them a chance to play their older games in a different way. Modern gamers love them because it gives them a chance to play some of their old games they might not have the console for. And companies love them because it gives them a chance to make a whole lot of money with little effort. Truly a win-win for all. Some remakes though are better than others. Some like Super Mario 3D All-Stars are just high-resolution ports. Some like Wind Waker HD just give the graphics a little boost and add a couple of new things here and there, while others like Kirby Superstar improve upon everything and add so much that they completely replace the original. Now, out of every franchise, the one with the most consistent flow of remakes is probably Pokemon. These re-releases are without a doubt some of the greatest remasters of all time. They improve the graphics, the music, the gameplay, add more areas, Pokemon, elements from newer generations, more moves, more items, more side quests, more side modes, more everything. However, technically 4 titles stand out from this list: Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Fans have revered these titles for years as the pinnacle of what a remaster should look like. So today, let's have a look at the latter and see why Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green is a perfect remake. First off, we have the presentation. Gen 1, well, my third favorite Pokemon game in the series, even if you exclude Fire Red and Leaf Green, isn't too appealing in the visual department. Many of these sprites look a little off. In my opinion, it only adds to the experience by making me feel like I'm back in 1998. To others though, the sprites are horrendous, and they aren't exactly wrong. Just take a look at Wigglytuff. These sprites, along with the monotone graphics, can really drag down the game for newer players. For some at least. Like I said earlier, Red and Blue's graphics really don't bother me personally, they only add to the charm. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the massive graphical upgrade Fire Red and Leaf Green added. Here, many of the sprites are colorful, well detailed, and overall nice to look at. Since this is technically a Gen 3 installment, many graphical elements are reused from Ruby and Sapphire, but most are actually made from the ground up, although in the same style as Ruby and Sapphire. The visuals have aged beautifully, with there not really being anything feeling out of place or looking hard on the eyes. There's a reason why most Pokemon animation channels all use a Gen 3-like style for their characters. The visual presentation is just perfect. Now, while the graphics of the Gen 1 games have been criticized by many, I think we can all agree that the soundtrack is a freaking masterpiece. So the foundation was already there for Fire Red and Leaf Green to build up upon, and man did they build. All the classics, the Mount Moon theme, the Trainer Battle theme, the Rocket Base theme, Wild Pokemon theme, your Rival Battles theme, and of course all the music that plays in the various routes. They've all been upgraded from 8-bit to 32-bit, but still managed to keep that nostalgic atmosphere, or even get better than they were originally, like with Mount Moon. The only places where I can say the music wasn't as good is in Lavender Town and Pokemon Tower, because they were trying to make Lavender Town less creepy, but it ended up sounding pretty forgettable, while the original was friggin' awesome. Alongside these remix tracks are a number of music from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. The music that plays in gyms, after defeating a wild Pokemon, after defeating a gym leader, and most sound effects are all reused from those games. None of them feel out of place though, since they are themselves remixes of tracks from Gen 1 anyway, but just so happen to be used in the other Gen 3 titles. So not only do Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green have a huge upgrade in graphics, but in audio as well. It's a great example for developers to look at to learn how to boost the presentation of an old game, while at the same time making it feel like the same game and keeping its core. Alright, next up are all the elements that are brought in from the second and third generations. There's breeding, new moves, new items, new evolutions, tons of Jodo Pokemon you can get later on in the adventure. There's abilities, you can rematch trainers in a similar fashion to Emerald and added shinies, although I've never seen one, and better typing. For instance, in the original installments, psychic types are ridiculously OP. Like, they smash everything. even ghost types, which are usually the killing blow in the later installments. Guess what? There's only like one ghost type move in the whole game, Lick, and at psychic types, there was a glitch in the code, so they're actually immune to ghost types in the original. And since the only ghost types in the original games are Ghastly, Gengar, Haunter, that family, and they're poison types, it actually means that they're weak to psychic type moves. So there's pretty much no counter to psychic types in the original games, since there's no dark either. So, yeah. I mean, it can be fun when you have an overpowered psychic type, but not so much when your opponent does. Here in FireRed, psychic types aren't quite the beast they were before, with actual effective ghost types and dark type moves being able to take them down. Oh, and let's not forget all the little things, like whenever you throw a Pokeball, whatever Pokeball you throw at a Pokemon, that's the same ball you send them out of at the beginning of a fight, or the new TM's gym leaders give out, or even the ability to run. Some stuff was kept the same though, evolution stones for instance. In most other games, like Gold and Silver or X and Y, these stones are quite rare, and you can only get a certain number of them per save file. But here, you can buy fire, water, and thunder stones from stores, just like in the originals. So thank goodness they didn't change that. One thing I'm glad they didn't change though was how Red and Blue had no day and night cycle, nor does FireRed and Leaf Green. Which is nice, don't get me wrong though, I do like day and night cycles in the Pokemon games, but it would completely change the experience if they introduced them here. At least because of that, there's no save battery to worry about, which is really nice to think about, because I worry all the time about my Emerald cartridge, its battery going dead. To sum things up, these remakes spice things up by adding new and frankly better elements from more recent installments in the franchise, but they've added just enough to make the games better, but not to the point of changing the heart and essence of Gen 1. It's a perfect balance. It helps more modern fans by having mechanics they're used to, while at the same time being enjoyable to players who've already played through Gen 1 by introducing new elements. Speaking of which, now we have one of the greatest things about FireRed and Leaf Green, something that remakes, especially nowadays, really need to add more of. New content. Enter the Sevi Islands, an area filled with hours of content after the main story is over. You first get a chance to get to the islands after clearing the 7th gym, although I typically don't like to do anything here until after the main story is over. There are many things you can do here. Moltres was moved from Victory Road to here. Many Jodo Pokemon can be caught here, at least after you get the National Dex. And breeding. There are many other side quests here as well, such as collecting gemstones for Bill's friend, taking down the last of Team Rocket, or just fighting other trainers. All in all, there's a total of about 5 to 10 extra hours of gameplay here, and it's pretty solid. I put it in the same league as most other post-game regions in the series. They give new content to people who've already played through Gen 1, while simultaneously bridging the gap between the first 3 Pokemon generations. It's too bad there is never a brief couple episodes dedicated to the Sevi Islands in the anime, unless you want to count the Orange Islands as being the anime equivalent to the Sevi Islands, but that's a topic for another day. Factoring in everything these games have improved upon, the graphics, the sound, the gameplay, the new features, the new Pokemon, and the improved areas, it wouldn't be so far-fetched to assume that this is one of the greatest video game remasters of all time. As are most Pokemon remakes, and I would make some videos about these other ones if I could record DS stuff, but I can't sadly, so this video will have to do. On a higher note though, I cannot wait to get my hands on either a copy of Brilliant Diamond or Shining Pearl, but I haven't even played through Platinum yet, so I better get to that first. Anyway, I'd like for everyone to write down in the comments what you think of the Gen 4 remakes, and if it's worth playing over Platinum, because I haven't paid any attention to the trailers or anything, so I have no clue what it's like. Besides that, I wish you all a good day, and see you all next time. Video game creepypastas. Most aren't good, let's be honest. Either the main character's an idiot, there's all this hyper-realistic blood, or the writer just can't use paragraph breaks. However, the one game series I feel has the best collection of creepypastas has to be Pokemon, mostly because all there is to work with, especially all those Pokedex entries, and there's been a new leak recently, yeah I heard about that, it's a bit messed up. Now, a lot are pretty bad. Check out Yuri of Wynn's channel to see for yourself, but there are some real diamonds in the rough. Out of all the spooky urban legends and creepypastas related to Pokemon, none has scared me and interested me more than Pokemon Lost Silver. So, sit back and get comfy, because for this Halloween night, let's revisit it a decade later, and see if it's as bone-chilling as it was long ago. Real fast, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, because if I did, this would be an hour-long video probably, and I don't have the patience for that. I'm instead just gonna summarize it, while footage of a fan-made game of it plays in the background. Around the time of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver's release, the narrator, a college student, can't afford the game upon release. By the end of his semester, he's able to order a copy from Amazon, yet it won't arrive for weeks. He decides to replay Gen 2 during the wait. However, his mother had thrown away all his old Pokemon games, since their batteries had died. Which sounds a lot like my mom, only with mine it was because she thought they would cause demon possession and stuff, because the pastor told her so, but that's beside the point. Anyway, he decided to go to GameStop to buy a used copy of Pokemon Silver. A few things about this strike me as odd. First is the fact that this copy sold for $10. Were Pokemon games really that cheap in 2010? Plus, this is GameStop, so. Also, this story was written at a time when GameStop stopped selling GBC games, but before they began selling them again as retro in the mid-2010s, I think. Something like eBay would have worked a lot better as a plot device, that's all I'm saying. Those plot holes aside, he gets the game, goes home, and begins to play it. Weird things happen from the very start, from having difficulties getting the game to start up, to the game beginning not at the title screen, but on a previous save file. Whoever this previous owner was, he sure played the crap out of it, having all 251 Pokemon, max money, all badges, and having spent over 1,000 hours in game. The author thinks that whoever had it beforehand either cheated or was a hardcore Pokemon fan. But, as Yuri of Wynn said in his video, if you spend that much time in a game, you've moved on from being a hardcore fan into just insanity. Look, I know there are a lot of people who have legit reached that clock-out limit, Chugga Conroy being one of them, but I just can't imagine spending that much time in a game. If you are a person who has, well, I have a lot of respect for you. Respect, but I still think you're at least a little crazy. Anyway, oddly enough, his Pokemon team sucked ass, consisting of 5 unknowns and a Cyndaquil named Hurry. The unknown spelt leave as well. If it was me who got this game, I probably wouldn't even notice this since I usually have no idea which unknowns correspond with which letters. The Cyndaquil was only level 5, had 1 HP left, and only 2 moves, Leer and Flash. He appeared to be in Bellsprout Tower, only there's no one else around, and the pillar didn't move like it normally does. After a few minutes, the narrator finds an exit behind the pillar. This exit led to a black room, with the radio static and the ruins of Alf playing, which is one of the creepiest songs in Pokemon. Honestly, I feel like it's creepier than Lavender Town. This song freaks me the fuck out most of the time. Anyway, he used Flash to light the room, only to see everything was blood red. He began heading south, and as he did so, the room became darker and darker, before reaching a sign, saying turn back now. Then a dialogue box popped up, asking yes or no. The narrator picked yes, causing the screen to turn black again, and a Pokeflute theme to play. Using Flash again to light the room caused Hurry to faint. Alarmed, he checks his Pokemon, only to find that his team is different, now being 6 unknowns, spelling he died. This room looked to be a grave site, like Pokemon Tower from Lavender Town in Gen 1. Gold's arms now appeared to be missing, and his expression changed, looking less smug and more empty. His character then began to spin, and he fell down into another room. Gold was now colorless, like a sprite from the original Game Boy games, thrown into a Gen 2 game as the author says. Checking his trainer card, Gold dons his most iconic look of this creepypasta. His legs are gone too, being a floating torso. His skin is white, his eyes are now gaping holes, with blood seeping out of them. His team changed once again, to 5 unknowns and a Celebi. This time the unknown spelt out, dying. The Celebi meanwhile was shiny, yet only half the sprite appeared to be there, and it only had one move, Perish Song. This new area, once again, looks similar to Bellsprout Tower, only with an eerie red glow. The narrator walks north, until he comes across sprites of other characters. They too appeared white and colorless. He tried speaking to them, but couldn't. He continues his walk, only to come across Red. He's in even worse shape than Gold, being transparent. The two then face off in a Pokemon battle. Despite having a whole team of unknowns, the only Pokemon Gold threw out was his Celebi, while Red throws out his Pikachu. This Pikachu was different, looking sad with tears in his eyes. Also, it was level 255, as if fighting Red wasn't hard enough as it is. Celebi used Perish Song, and both Pokemon fainted after 3 turns. Only they didn't. They died. Somehow, the player is victorious, but when Red's sprite shows up again, he's headless this time. When the battle ends, he finds himself in Gold's room in New Bark. He checks out his team. This time, the unknowns spell out no more. If being limbless and having bloody eye sockets wasn't bad enough already, Gold has been reduced to only his head, transparent skin, and his eyes have become an even deeper void. He explores the house, hoping to be able to play the game normally now, but deep down, he knew that he wouldn't be able to. Downstairs, Gold's mother wasn't home, which is probably a good thing. The last thing a mother wants to see is her son as a transparent floating head with bleeding eyeballs, or what used to be eyeballs. He leaves the house into a dark void. Gold's sprite becomes white to contrast against the darkness. He kept going south until he came across a sprite, Gold's old normal sprite. It said, "Goodbye forever." After this, something used Nightmare, and what was left of the player began another descent downwards. He was back in the graveyard area, with no sprite in the overworld. In a trainer card, Gold disappeared as well, and in the place of gym badges were skulls. Once again, a new team of unknowns were in his possession, spelling "I'm dead." Gold had presumably died a premature death, and despite his accomplishments, was ultimately forgotten. I mean, that's basically how the fanbase remembered Gold or Ethan or whatever you want to call him anyway. Depending on how you interpret game lore, he surpassed Red, plus the Gen 2 games and the remakes are so many people's favorite games in the series, yet Gold is somehow kind of forgotten. Anyway, the author tried to reset the game, only to end up in the same grave again and again. Eventually he gives up, waits for Soul Silver to arrive, and has a great time with it. The end. Now, as far as video game creepypastas go, that was pretty good, mostly because of one element. It's slightly believable. There's no supernatural elements to the piece. The author says again and again that he believes it's a hack game, or a fan game, mistakenly sold at GameStop. It's much different than, let's say, something that involves haunted games or curses, or someone getting murdered or going crazy. The imagery works rather well too, even if it is a little cliche. Gold's body becoming more and more unnerving, unknown spelling hidden messages, along with utilizing already creepy aspects of these old games. At least, I always thought Bellsprout Tower was freaky. I can't be the only one, can I? Soon after the creepypasta was written, a fan game was made of it, which is what I played to get footage for this video. There are multiple versions and revisions of it, with alternate endings and the like, and it's very well made, bringing the author's story to life perfectly. The sprite work is great, and it's way freakier than just reading a story by itself. As for my personal experiences with the story, well, my first experience with it was when I was 12. It was a good couple of years after it came out, around 2015 or so, and I came across Yuri of Hoenn's video on it, which is a pretty good video, and I recommend you watch it. Anyway, it freaked me out a ton, especially the image of gold as a floating torso of bloody tears. Like I said earlier, it's the most iconic moment of Lost Silver, being the main focus of countless fan art. Despite being freaked out, I always imagined how cool it would be to be in this state, going around my school and scaring the daylights out of the kids who used to pick on me. The creepypastas of the Pokemon franchise were as well some of my first exposures to the series, after the Smash series, and hearing about how demonic and evil it was from various people throughout my life, which probably made me view these stories as even creepier than they actually were. Lavender Town Syndrome, Lost Silver, Creepy Black, we all came together to create this sense of mysteriousness and wonder. When I finally got to play the series as a teenager, this feeling went away, replaced with love of Pokemon. Part of me still misses the days where a simple tale like Lost Silver was enough to leave a big impact on me. Alas, sadly, they are long gone. If you liked the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and maybe even check out some other videos I've made on the Pokemon franchise. I have a whole playlist right here. And if you have stories on your own about Lost Silver, tell me in the comments. I hope you all have a great Halloween, and with that, I'll see you all later.